James Nyberg, Councillor for Erskine South Warden.
Eva Cassidy, CA.
Larry Clark, Watha Gadsby and Reeve.
Dave Grower, Big Valley's Councillor.
Wayne Nixon, Denelda, Red Willow.
Stewart, Bangor, Indian.
Andrew Burshik, Director of Technology.
Shauna Benson, Legislative Services.
Over here, Greg Green, Director of Engineering and Public Works. Lee Hardman, Director of Technical Services.
James Paulson, Neighborhood Southward.
Thank you. Next thing on the agenda is swearing in of Deputy Reeve Grover.
You raise your right hand.
I, Dave Grower, solemnly swear to truthfully declare and affirm that I will honestly and faithfully and be the best of my ability and exercise the powers and duties according to the law and the office of Deputy Reeve for the County of Stettler.
Congratulations.
Can we do that again where we can hear you this time? Into the mic.
Thank you. Agenda additions and approval.
Mr. Chairman, I have two for in camera. Update on Trident explorations and the Denelda Ag Society.
Mr. Chairman, if I can answer that, is, we didn't have any in camera, right?
No.
Okay, so this is new in camera?
Yes.
Okay, so Trident and,
Denelda Ag Society.
I think I would like to have somewhere here where we can put down for permission to go to senior housing.
it is actually, 15 is second from the last, Mr.
Second from the
Chairman.
last one, okay, thank you.
Unfortunately, you have to go again this year.
Whether you want to or not, eh?
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other additions? Councilor Stolberg,
I'll move the agenda be approved with the additions.
all in favor? Carried. Okay, we should be able to step into delegation, right?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll step into delegation if you wanna come up, there's two seats there. Any update, Nate?
Yes, if that's okay, I won't take much of your guys' time. I think you've heard my spiel, so I mostly wanted to give you an opportunity if you had questions of me about the platform as it's been rolling out, where I could tell you if you haven't been following kind of what we've been up to, and then I'd ask if there's any current issues or developments that you'd like to pass on to me. That would be helpful as well. But I can start if you'd like. The platform for the UCP has started to roll up. I'm sure you've noticed the province seems to be in campaign mode, even though the election hasn't been called yet. It would appear that it will happen fast, as by all speculation. The throne speech is scheduled for March 18th. There's a lot of speculation that Premier Notley will drop the writ sometime shortly after that, but it is only speculation, and it needs to be called by the end of May. So it's a 28 day writ period. So that's kind of where we stand. So the latest it could be called would be May 3rd, I believe, for a May 31st election. I guess the main points that we've rolled out so far, it's an economic platform, I would say. The Bill 1 is still repeal the carbon tax, followed by an Open for Business Act, with a big emphasis on cutting red tape. The regulatory burden in Alberta, the plan is to try to cut it by a third in a 4-year term. Sounds ambitious, but it was done by Christy Clark in BC. I think she did it by 41%, I believe. So the goal is to make us more efficient, more streamlined, and less bureaucracy. Yesterday we were in Rimby to roll out a bit of agriculture-specific platform. The Bill 6 will be repealed. Some people in some of the larger stakeholder groups like Alberta beef producers and some of the other industry-led groups that came in after to consult weren't sure that was the right approach, but the goal is to have mandatory insurance for farm workers, but make the bill better. Goal is to bring some competitiveness to the marketplace. WCB specifically has no competition in this case, so the goal is to try to have some options and have some insurance that covers workers maybe when they're not at work either, you know, when they're at home or on the weekend, and look at some of the other labor issues around hours worked and make it a better bill. Do the consulting first, not afterwards. Along with that, the regulation in the ag sector, gonna try to do what we can to keep Alberta competitive. Competitiveness is the theme of this next government. So, as the biggest driver to bring investment back will be around this job creation tax cut. It's a 4% decrease to the corporate tax in Alberta. It'll be rolled out over the term, so it'll drop 1% every July over the 4 years. So it's currently at 12. It would end by it would be at 8% by 2023. The reason they've done that, they have a few economists on staff working on the platform, and there was no incentive to cut the personal tax at this point because we're in tough shape, obviously, and they need to create jobs. And the multitude of benefit through the corporate tax, I think it was the economist Jack Mintz said it should create 55,000 private sector jobs. That cut alone, coupled with the regulatory cuts. So it's basically an economic platform. Jason has made it clear that he's going to continue to, I guess, a spending freeze, not a cut to health services. In this current year, the NDP spent $22.1 billion on health, and Jason's promised to spend at least that much or more. But while still doing a review of AHS, they are going to do a full performance review, and the goal is to push any efficiencies or resources they find down to the front line and hopefully out into the rural areas. The centralization aspect seems to be one. It's on the front of their mind. They're going to try to service rural Alberta better. Just trying to think of what else. Yeah, let's go ahead, Dave.
The Mega Lab in Edmonton.
Yeah. So $640 million was the projected spend, and we've said that we're going to scrap that. It also involved a $50 million of the $640 million. There's a $50 million buyout. The province was going to have to buy out Dynalife to make the move, and so Jason said that we're scrapping that. And as an example, it's about the same spend the Red Deer Hospital would cost, or this South Edmonton Hospital. The Edmonton Chamber was against the super lab. The U of A was against the super lab. There's 700 employees that are currently working in downtown Edmonton. You know, it's a private sector setup. They're renting space, so that they thought it would exacerbate the problem of downtown vacancies. Plus, you know, we're basically nationalizing that part of health. You know, we're turning lab workers into union provincial employees when it seems to be.
That's what I was under the understanding, I just wanted to hear your pitch on it.
Yeah. Yeah, an example of trying to, you know, we know we're in tough times and we have some hospitals that need to be built, so, you know, focus on patient care and the front line.
Can I have one more?
Yeah.
Part-time farmhand.
Yeah.
Like whether you hire a guy for a month and a half in the spring just to cow cows out, and he's sort of semi-retired, can you get, are you guys gonna have somewhere where you can get insurance for this guy?
I think definitely that'll be part of the consultation.
Same in the fall, like you.
But part of the proposal that came out yesterday is small farms, and I think the line in the sand they drew was 3 employees or less will be exempt from a lot of this. They may have to provide proof of insurance and a safe working environment, however that looks, but they'll be removed from the OH&S, the onerous side of OH&S for small farm yards. So I think part-time work will definitely be looked at.
What about small farmer, him and his wife farm, they all run equipment, and the daughter and her husband, they run, so there's 4. They're still gonna, so they're gonna have to jump through all the hoops then?
Well, they'd be family, so they'd be exempt currently.
Currently.
Yeah, but
Those are
good points.
If you happen to get in there, are they gonna stay exempt?
Oh, definitely, yeah.
All right, no, thank you.
I'll go second.
I heard what you called me.
For next,
I have 3 actually for you, Nate.
you know what,
We had very much a split council on the Bill 6. We actually had one of our councilors was part of the consultations, and I personally think there was some very good points in that bill that came out. Number one, the right to refuse unsafe work. We never had that in the legislation before, and I think it's very important. And whether I'm working beside 2 guys or 5 guys, I still think it's my prerogative to refuse unsafe work. I find it quite, I guess, interesting that under Bill 6, or under your proposed bill, I don't know what one we would call it, that if I'm an oil field worker that has 3 employees, I'm not going to be exempt and I have to jump through all the hoops. But yet if I had own a farm, which in all purposes probably could make more money than my oil field company and be way more successful considering the oil patch is in such rough shape right now, they're exempt. And I find that quite odd, in the fact that I think we're treating 2 industries, and farming isn't that mom and pop stuff that I'm talking about. I think it's farming. I mean, you'll know. I mean, it's very progressive right now. It's very innovative, and it's very technical. I mean, when we get into the spraying operations, when we get into any of the mechanical operations, heavy equipment, we're not using, a 50-horse tractor to cultivate and seed anymore. Right? Some of these air seeders are humongous, and I think it's imperative that you guys get this one right. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater on that one, because I'm not an absolutist. I don't think that the NDP made it absolutely right, and I don't think they made it absolutely wrong. But there are a number of things in there that are there out there. And I will challenge you a little bit right now. Under the Workers' Compensation Board, you can exempt out of workers' compensation if you can prove private insurance. There are private providers out there right now that you can get private insurance from if you want to. Even any company can do that. So you just have to be able to prove that you have a certificate that's out there. So tax decreases. I like the idea of the 12% going to 8%. The only consideration I have, do you guys know how many dollars that's actually going to take out of the provincial coffers? Do you have
I think, if I can interject, I think the projection was it would be a $300 million shortfall in the first year. By year 4, it would be a $1 to $2 to $1.3 billion increase over current.
Okay, and that's Jack Mintz is the one who put that
I
out.
believe it's Jack Mintz or Trevor Toom.
Yeah,
in
and
Calgary.
I followed both of them, and they were, that sounds fairly close. Are you guys still on board with the cancer center in Calgary? You're still a go with it. If it goes forward, you guys won't kibosh that?
Yes, he said anything that's, no contracts will be ripped up that were signed in good faith anywhere.
Okay.
They did want to look at some things that have been promised since the February 1st deadline across the board, like the rail cars, but things like the cancer center.
I would really like to see you get together with the Central Alberta Caucus, as it would be, your two members that are running in the Red Deer area, Innisfail, yourself, Camrose, Olds, your Pinoka counterpart, and then the Rimbey, Rocky area. The Red Deer Hospital, I don't know if you've been in there lately. It is in dire need of replacement. We have scheduled for replacement of our hospital, and we're on board to do that, and that's awesome. But we utilize, when we get into major issues, all of those people in Central Alberta are using Red Deer Hospital, and it is very antiquated. It's time for an update, and I know there's just so much money in the pockets, and I get it, but I think it's something that needs to be moved up the chain, and I think it's been forgotten, I dare say, 44 years of PC government, because that hospital's over 55 years old in some areas. So I've asked mine. Thank you very much, Mr. Clark.
Councilor Nixon?
There's recently, there's been some money given out to the city's transportation money, and we were in the queue, high up in the queue for bridges, and resource roads are no longer, I don't think, I think there still may be a budget line in the budget, but not funded. So we felt that we should have been getting a grant either for water line, which would have finished our Shirley McClellan line to the west, and money for bridges, which I don't know, Yvette will probably check me up on the numbers in this, but I think we got something like 11 or so that are, is it that many that are in need of repair? But the money, I guess my point is, there's money handed out, and no doubt it was politically timed in the last couple of weeks for these major projects. And I think and none to the rural areas, very little to the rural areas. And I guess what I'm saying is that people have to realize that everything, oil and all the agricultural products and forestry, comes from rural Alberta. And so we need to be funded fairly. So I think that's I don't only want to comment on that or not, but I think that's something that some people fail to miss. I know the votes are in the cities, but.
Well, I'm hopeful, and in speaking to some of the other candidates, if we're successful, I hope that that'll be kind of a theme within the rural caucus, so to speak. I know I think it was the president of the RMA, or the chair currently, wrote a pretty good article about how the rural municipalities take care of, I think it was 75% of the land of Alberta, so.
It's likely more than that, but.
Yeah, and so 75% of the roads, and it's a big responsibility, and with failing industrial tax base and what's going on out here, I think that we need to pay respect to the footprint of Alberta that we're tasked with looking after, and I hope to make that clear.
Councilor Stillward?
I guess same in the theme of what rural Alberta has to deal with is, does your party have any thoughts for a stable MSI funding model so that we're guaranteed?
Nothing that's been ruled out in writing, but I know there's discussion that's been brought up a lot.
Okay, so I guess you can just contribute.
Yes, I'll add to that. Yeah,
pretty important for us.
Yell a lot, jump up and down. So, very important.
While we're standing on the box too, Water for Life, we had a bunch of water projects in the queue, which is, up at the Buffalo Lake to go to the Village of Ocean Sands, to go to the provincial park to service a bunch of the county area, the county subdivisions up there. We have the water to White Sands, and we were totally ignored. We were sitting very high in the queue, and we got totally ignored this last announcement. And it is, there's some pretty big end users in a rural basis, so it's something else. And the phone doesn't quit ringing on people now wanting water in these areas, rural areas. Everybody's got their hand out for money, but it is, it goes back to that rural piece of, fueling the fire, so.
Oh, very good.
Nate, I've got another question on the power generation.
Yes.
We had, it's AECO was in here, wasn't it? So, yeah, so, yeah. They were in and did a presentation, and they talk about their models, and they talk about the wind, alternate energy sources, and you look at our coal generation plants and the goal of shutting them down. That's part of the carbon tax, and it's part of being Alberta, and part of efficiently using our energy is your platform to follow that same route to shut these coal generated plants down. Because last month when it was so cold, I could see the wind towers from my yard, and they weren't really turning.
Yeah.
And the stacks off the Forsberg power plant were going straight up. That's where we were getting our power from. So it really concerns me how maybe we got the dog.
I haven't, I don't have it in writing, but I've been told that we're gonna have a fresh look at the entire system. The first, the carbon tax is huge. Like when it's speaking to ATCO at Sheerness specifically, the carbon tax sped up the transition to gas almost entirely by itself. The problem we will come to, we can remove all the barriers that are expediting that transition to gas, and then we'll have to have the discussion with private companies like ATCO and others about their as ATCO explained to me, they have shareholders, they have momentum, they have optics and other things to think about, and then shortly after that I heard the plant was for sale. So I think we removed the barriers. We have the conversation that we as a province are not against this, and would like to see you find a way to lengthen the life of coal. Some of the other issues are federal. So if the NOx and SOx emissions regulations come on in 2026, that's been there for a little while, and it will require a lot more investment in the stacks. So it's a pretty big conversation, but I think we're committed to having it. We believe that for every megawatt of renewable energy, you need an equal megawatt of fossil energy behind it. So it's and as ATCO explained to me, it's causing big problems with the quality of our power, the stability of the coal plants. I'm not a mechanical engineer, but as he explained it, the big turning mass of metal at perfect frequency all across the province, it makes up for a lot of problems and gets rid of a lot of potential brownouts. So a lot of concern about what kind of power we're going to be left with if we're switching in and out of too many renewables.
I would almost say that we need 2 to 1 on the renewables to the fossil fuels. I mean, Mr. Nixon pointed out when ASO was here that ASO's plan is to go to it was 60% renewable, but they only work 10% of the time, so that's only giving you 6% of our power.
Yeah,
you can't. The way that they had that program that I looked at, if we went to, even if we were 50-50, there's no way that it would run because they just aren't running enough.
And maybe I should say Jason was clear, we're ending the subsidies to wind and solar. So I think you might see a lot less applications for these projects to start with. And we can have the conversation if it's gas or extending the life of coal, how we do that. Yeah.
Just to
follow up on Larry's comment, because there's a ASO has a real-time view of what power is doing in Alberta. And so probably the same day that Larry's talking about, the smokestacks are going mostly straight up. So I went onto the site, and the Halkirk wind farm is putting out 0. The Sheerness plant was, it's whatever it was rated for, however many megawatts.
795.
2 plants, I guess, 2 generators. One was putting out 10 megawatts more than maximum. So if they weren't there, we'd have been in trouble, I'll tell you. But Nate, I want to know, you said what Jason Kenney has said and what his platform stands for. I kind of want to know how you are going to deal with the municipalities and the general population of your riding.
Yes, I think that we have some real unique challenges. Like you guys are well aware of how big this riding is, from Painter's, Provost down to Empress, across the base, up the river to Drumheller, back along the river here to Stettler. It's huge, and I think a lot of the issues of population decline are getting really emphasized right now all across North America. So I think we have some real similar issues in this riding. So I hope to just, if I can work with everyone here to find out what we need and when we need it, and prioritize that, and just have a clear voice in government that this is necessary. There's two different Albertas right now. There's the two or maybe 3 major centers that are in a major growth phase, and then there's the rest of Alberta that's trying to hang on to the services that they have. And so I think you really have to make that clear, that there's 2 real different dynamics at play. And I think we're trying to build a province, not 2 cities. So I think you keep making that clear, and respect the footprint.
And it disappoints people when the announcements were for the roads. You got a 5-kilometer section between St. Albert and Edmonton that gets 55 million, and we've been pounding on the trying to get one secondary road in Les's area paved, so that the longest secondary road in Alberta is paved from one end to the other, and we get no response. Other than, I guess we get no. So, yeah.
I don't know if you saw Mayor Nenshi kind of threw the gauntlet down. He just, I think he went on Twitter and said, "So I want to hear from all of the potential premiers. What are you going to do for Calgary?" They're
not going to give them the Olympics.
Yeah.
I think that's one of our issues in Alberta is employment throughout all of Alberta. The last few years, a lot of people have become unemployed, and when you hear about these new energy sectors and read about how they're importing them from across the ocean, I think the important thing is we need to get back to the way Alberta was and employ Alberta here and build our resources here.
To add to that, part of the plan, there's been a concerted campaign against Alberta's and Canada's oil and gas sector, and so part of Jason's plan is he's calling it a war room, but it's basically we're gonna stand up for ourselves, and we're gonna get rid of some of the mistruths and misinformation that's out there, and kind of proactively stand up for ourselves and our products and our people. And it appears to me, and the party agrees, that agriculture is the next target. Whether you're hearing things about meat tax or methane from cows, it appears that that's the next wave. So they're hoping to learn with their mistakes and not sticking up for our oil and gas sector, and hoping to get ahead of it on the ag sector. And I think that's important. And I just to share a few stories, not necessarily in this riding even, but I had some calls from people I know in the Brooks area, and the one fella employs 300, the other employs 150. They've moved a lot of their business to North Dakota and Texas already because that's where the work is. But in their words, you got a couple months, or we're just moving and taking our families. And I have a brother-in-law that lives in Calgary, and he actually has a fab shop here in Stettler by the auction market. And he's quite proud of the fact that they haven't laid anyone off through this downturn, but they've basically been eating into their own savings as a family and trying to hold it together. And his line to me was, we might go to Texas anyways, just because we don't want to be the last ones left here. The amount of investment, they're saying 40 billion, it's probably more. And I think you lose a lot of your expertise when that goes too. Like you can bring the investment back, but you might not have the people that Alberta's created here with that specific background. So it's pretty scary. And in that same vein, the job creation tax cut, the corporate tax cut that Jason's speaking of, his line was, we need to be bold. It has to be bold enough that the CEOs that are in Vancouver or Toronto have to explain to their board why we're not moving to Alberta. And so that's some of the boldness of the platform. We need to make a statement and try to bring people in.
Just one comment on that tax break. I think that's a brilliant solution to creating jobs. But I was just wondering if 4% over 4 years, if it would be better to tier it with a greater amount in the initial half than the last half, just to expedite the influx of businesses back to Alberta.
And it surely might, Les. I don't know if they're just scared of moving too many things at once. We saw the NDP do that, and it's hard to even tell what all was the most hurtful.
Yeah.
But no, I appreciate that.
I'll just go one last question on the pipelines.
Yeah.
That's a big part of our economy. And as Jason, as Premier, how is he going to defend Alberta against Quebec and BC to try and get our product to saleable markets? And when you really look at Eastern Canada, there's refineries there to keep our work in Canada.
Mm-hmm. No, none of it makes much sense. I know you all have read all the articles and know it well, but Jason's been clear, and I think his federal background makes him a natural choice. I can't imagine who we could get who would be better on that file. There's candidates in the party. Sonia Savage, who, if she's successful, I'd predict would be the potential energy minister. She's been an Enbridge pipeline lawyer and lobbyist in Ottawa, worked for the federal government on the pipeline file under Stephen Harper. So I think they have the right people in place, and Jason's pledged to use every lever, every tool in the box, whether it's pushing for a referendum on the equalization payments, not mostly because they're unfair, and we're seeing that now in a hurting Alberta, but also as a lever to try to enact some more substantial action on that file. And the bill 12, the turn off the taps to BC, I'm not saying he will use that or won't, but it's there for us to use. BC claimed in a court case here recently that, please don't let Alberta use that because it'll devastate the mainland. And I think they made the case for us, stop protesting against the pipeline then. So, yeah.
I was just gonna ask what your party was thinking about with rural crime, since it's drastically increased these last few years, and we've been dealing with it. And I know the government's trying to help solve it with saying they're gonna bring in more people, but I don't think that has really happened. What is your platform for that?
There is a rural crime initiative, and a lot of it's reallocating funds. I forget the percentage of repeat offenders that we're finding in that file, but it's huge. So hopefully with a a judicial system that's doing its job. Maybe we can keep some of them off the streets a little longer. The drug, it's almost always drug related as well, and it's a symptom of a terrible economy. You know, it's a symptom of the disease is the terrible economy. But I think just you know, I as someone that lives an hour and 10 minutes from anywhere, you know, I know when there's I work with the HANA detachment to get the news out. We're never going to be able to overcome those distances, regardless of how many police we have at our detachments. So I think keep looking for new ways, new initiatives, and I guess with all the controversy over some of the shootings and incidents we've had, find a way to let rural people know that the system has their back, however that looks. You know, I don't think you want to encourage violence, but rural people just need to know that the system, they're not the criminals. You know, they're protecting their families. So, there's not a lot of specific direction other than keep working and keep consulting and hopefully put some people back to work. The demographic of young men, this is the lowest their employment's been since they've been keeping records in Canada, from 16 to 24. So hopefully an economy surge will help as well. Sure.
Talking to us?
Sure, and yeah, please reach out anytime if there's something you think I should know or something you're working on. I do appreciate it. So,
Thanks.
Yeah.
Safe drives.
yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Thank you. Hey, our minute approved for the February 13th, 2019 regular County of Stettler Council meeting minutes. 4.1.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move those. I just have one, if you'll allow me to get there. It was with the Botha, we talked about the Botha,
Middle?
no, it was the Botha MVP and yeah, it was the cemetery stuff, and you had excused yourself and Ernie took over. The way it looks in the minutes is that was part of the
That was Gadsby.
Gadsby, sorry, thank you, Gadsby. And it was part of it looks like it was part of the previous one, and I'm just wondering if the heading should just move up a little bit so it looks like the reason that you guys left was because of and I apologize, I don't have it up right now, but do you see what we're looking at there, Marlene? Reeve Clark left and Ernie took over. They both declared, but it should have been part of the second point, not it looks like they left because of the first one, and the Botha Cemetery had nothing, or the Gadsby Cemetery had nothing to do with you leaving, so. It was a 13 one, I think, so, yeah, I'm in the wrong minutes. Thank you.
Robert, did you have your glasses on when you read this?
I did, and that was the only reason that I caught it, Mr. Nixon. I mean, normally English is my second language, as you know, right?
Gadsby. Well, I think is that the viability review?
No. Yeah, it's right there. So you see that part there, Reeve Clark declared conflict, and the moratorium on development should have been moved. Just move that heading above those two. And then, yeah, if you move that right there. 3902, 1319. Yeah, and then it just makes it clear that that's what it was about. The other one, it looks like, if you go up, or just scroll up, it looks like we were talking about the Botha Cemetery, but neither one of you.
For $1,000.
Neither one of you declared Norm left out of that one, so. That just clarifies it, that's all, and other than that, I would move those minutes, Mr. Chairman.
Any other?
46, 13, 19.
It makes it look like I wasn't here for that Dave Ham presentation, but I was there for the, introductions that ran out, came right back in. The time's probably right, but it makes it look like I wasn't here when I was.
It looks like you were gone for 4 minutes, I don't think.
We can take it right.
Yeah, take it out there.
We didn't vote on it.
No.
And then it would be that one there would have to come out too, where you rejoin the meeting.
I think that has to be in
No,
there.
that's fine. It has it before, but I was here for that, so.
If you leave the rejoined meeting part in there, you have to put in a part where she, or where she was absent, so you might just wanna move it down.
I was here for the introduction,
You
so
can
I
put
left
time
right
on
after that.
When she left, and right, put it 4 minutes before the, when she
Well,
came
it
back
is,
in.
they were both had, well, we came out of camera at 2:32, she rejoined the meeting at 2:39, and then it continues on.
Okay, so,
So you can put the absent and rejoin, put them both above.
yeah, right beside each other.
There.
You didn't leave the in-camera session, though?
No, I only stepped out for just
She left when you, came out of camera and before the
You
introduction
guys took a
started.
break because Mr. Ham wasn't here when you guys came out of camera, so there was a bit of a delay there.
Anything else? So you're good with both sets of changes, then, Councilor Never? All in favor? Carried. The February 19th, 2019 Special County of Stettler number 6 council meetings. Any comments on that? Councilor Grover, motion to move. Any other things? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Okay, we have no public hearings, so to new business. Request for decision, re-AF policy dash meeting rooms, page 5 for package.
Mr. Chairman, I'm gonna refer this to Shauna from the policy committee.
Thank you. So, we presented this policy to the policy committee at the end of January. The policy committee saw no real issues with the way that we were, that the policy states to rent out rooms. And so basically we rent it out to not-for-profits and, for free. And if you are just a company that needs a meeting space and you're a profit or for-profit company, we would charge you a meeting rate. So we also updated some pieces about usage of our equipment and that you have to request that equipment when you sign the rental agreement. When I was doing the research on writing this request for decision, we did realize that we haven't rented out a room to an outside organization in 2 years. Actually, since the shop opened. Because Cindy, who used to be our front desk receptionist, used to handle the rentals, and since she left, nobody has handled one since, which means we haven't rented it out to somebody outside of our organization where there isn't a member of our staff or council as part of the meeting, whether they're a facilitator or a member of that committee. So it begs the question whether or not we even open up our meeting space for rentals at all. There is a cost involved. If a person is in this building after hours, there must be a staff person present. And we would be required to pay them.
Mr. Chairman, I think we did discuss that a little bit, and I think part of the savings when we discussed that was the fact that our cleaner is now an employee and they could cover off that position. Just because it's not there, I would like to see this stay on the books because of the simple fact is it's a service we provide. In 2 years, maybe we haven't had that. That may be the case, but as things maybe get busier in the community, we might see that again. I don't know if we overly advertise that much either, but I think it's an opportunity. I would hate to say no to somebody if they needed it. So.
I agree, Mr. Chairman. We, the Shirley McClellan meetings are here, and they're not really, they're a separate organization of which we are members. So, I mean, that's, I guess that's something. But in the past, we've had the Battle River Watershed Alliance meetings here, and, of which we were a member at the time. So I agree. I don't think we should take it completely off the books.
on the motion.
To motion that we accept this as amended. I think we did change a couple of things, audio, video, as presented, sorry.
The changes are presented there, and if you want any changes to those, then you would do amendments.
I think the one change was TVs to audio, video equipment.
Yeah, we just took out the specific references to old school technology and just call it equipment. And when
You still have a slide projector.
Don't know that we ever have. I don't think we even have our overhead anymore.
There you go.
So as per Councilor Nyberg's motion, all in favor? Carried. Okay, request for decision, Rural Crime Convention attendance, page 8 of our package.
Mr. Chairman, this is a request from Councilor Neitz. Basically, and correct me if I'm wrong, to send one member, it's the same price or roughly the same price to send two. So we thought perhaps there should be an opportunity for the other counselor or another counselor or member to go to the
I would like to make a motion, just to get the debate started, that we send Councilor Neitz, who is the chair of that committee, plus a member at large, or one of the other committee members.
Yeah, that'll be fine. They suggested that both counselors go, but I'm sure they'll be fine with a member at large. I know.
Sherry, Mr. Chairman, through the Sherry, we did talk about that, and I thought it would be a good idea to get a member from the public member to go to that as well.
Just for clarification, we'll be sending 3 people, a CPO, and then 2 members. Is that one being a counselor and being a public member? Okay. Just one other question with that is, it does fall on our council day, so I'm just, if you're okay with that, missing the council day.
Right, I was gonna discuss that too, to see if we wanted to change it or I just missed that day, so. I know for Lee, it's covered under his budget. And he did sign us up as a member, so we're able to get the county as a whole member, so we're able to get that cheaper too to attend that conference. So. And he did a lot of research into this too before we even brought it forward to council. We wanted to make sure it was worth our while, and he did a lot of research into it and figured it would be worth our while with a lot of rural components to it.
I guess I've got one concern. See, like when we, as a council, vote on these and we send ourselves to it, should that town, okay, as in your point, Sheree, should you be voting on that one? Like, I don't know how we've really done in the past, but it was just a concern that I had shared with Yvette last night. Should that person be voting or should they be refraining from it?
Mr. Chairman, through to Councillor Gender, why wouldn't you vote on it?
Okay, like with the member going there, they are looking at receiving funds from there.
I'm sorry, if you think that receiving funds is a bonus, I'm not sure how that benefits you. Miss Neitz will take 3 days out of her life, leave her family, go to Canmore, which Canmore can be a nice place. You're going to use wear and tear on your vehicle. That's compensation for. I guess what I'm getting at is if you see it as either compensation or payment for a job, and I see it as compensation. I don't see it as a payment for a job. So I don't think she's hiring herself out to make money at this. I think it's one of those things that she is being compensated for missing her other time. So, and I think that's the same for any member of this council. I think so.
That's not the point I was making. I fully believe that we should be compensating for it, but it is actually for the voting part of it, voting themselves to be able to go on these. That's the only part I don't know in the past how we have always voted.
We've always voted that you sit on a council board or you sit on a certain committees, you are there to advocate for the best possible outcome for that committee. We represent the county, but Miss Needs has a very passion for rural crime. That's why she wanted to be put on the rural crime. I think she should be the one voting for this. She's the one that has the most at stake. So if she voted against it, I would say that there might be a little bit of conflict of interest. But the fact that she's the one that's bringing this forward, I think it's imperative that she does vote on it.
Just a point, Mr. Chairman, to that, and Councilor Nyberg brought up that argument when we were doing our wage increases to council, where it should be done by a committee, but we all voted on it, so, I mean, it's the same kind of a thing.
And if he has motion, then he.
I made the motion, yeah, that,
Yes, okay, yes, you did.
and a member from the committee, or the public,
Any other comments?
Just one other question. Do you guys have another meeting before you go? Or will you just send it out via email and get the member at large who wants to go?
Yeah, we'll probably have to send it out by email because, to get this early bird savings, we gotta register by the end of the month.
Okay. Yeah, so just send it out and straw poll to see who wants to go. Hopefully you get somebody.
I'm sure, Mr. Chairman, I'm sure that somebody from the committee will be willing to go, and, you know, you could book your rooms anyway without.
Use conscription.
If you right.
We do have a chair and vice chair, so we can ask the vice chair too.
Just a question, through to Councilor Needs. When is our next rural crime meeting?
We scheduled it for after so we can bring the report to them. I'll just check it's in here.
Pardon me?
I'm just gonna check and see. I think it was scheduled for after, just so we can bring the report back.
Okay.
But I'll check.
Andrew, do you have music?
It's May 22nd,
May 22nd?
Wednesday, May 22nd.
Just hunt on the ball, 3 weeks already.
Yep.
Okay, any other questions or comments? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Request for decision, library conference attendance.
Mr. Chairman, this is an annual request from the Stettler Library Board Chair, Jane Scott-Pool, to attend this conference. She attends every year. I understand this year she's presenting. She did email me the other day, told me she wouldn't be charging mileage, but I explained to her that I want to leave the motion, if you make it, to include everything in case something pops up, so we can properly reimburse her.
I would like to make the motion that we approve Jane Scott-Pool to attend the Alberta Library Conference.
Any other questions or comments? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Request for decision, purchase truck chassis for sign truck. 15 of our package.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to refer this to Rick.
Got back to some time. Believe it or not, I got my soapbox stuff down to 5 minutes.
It's hard to
You
believe.
get two.
I can usually talk for hours. Okay, so where we're at, I guess you can see by the request for decision, we're still having some issues getting some pricing for Dodge trucks, just like we did last year. They're unable to provide pricing and availability on anything. So we went out to Ford. GM does not have a comparable truck, so we're trying to replace an existing, I think it's a 450 or 550 dual-wheeled truck that carries our picker and sign. It's got in that neighborhood of 300,000 kilometers on it. It's getting to be difficult to keep it in operation every day when we need it every day. So for this particular instance, we're trying to replace it in kind with what we have, and then we're going to take the deck and the picker off the truck we have, move it over to this, and then have the other one with a dump box on it and use it intermittently for work as it stays running and whatnot. But it's getting a little difficult to keep the old girl going. So based on the pricing you see there, we did talk to those 3 Ford dealerships. GM was unable to provide a truck, and Dodge was unable to provide pricing. So right now we're at, looks like Lacombe Ford was low go on that, so we're looking for permission to carry on with that plan that was in the budget. And just anecdotally about that, this may not happen, because at the time I was doing this up and we were confirming our prices, it sounds like they were down to about 300 such trucks in North America that are gonna be available from the Ford side. So I'll be making a phone call to see if I can attach one if you approve this right away. Should that fail into we're unable to get the truck we need, I'll come back with another plan later.
Staff recommendation.
I have a question, how much, do you get any of the GST back?
We don't pay GST, it just flows through. I think, we pay it to the dealer, but Yvette does a little magic and it's gone.
Well, Krista does it, but we get it on.
Mr. Chairman, through to Rick, is there any case that we could make this, that we could make the case that purchasing from a local dealer is viable? I mean, we're $4,000 out. What do you get from Lacombe Ford and what would you get from Aspen Ford? Is there any extenuating circumstances to provide us that we might get?
We gave them identical specs. We got identical things back. The biggest difference I saw in the numbers that were provided was when Westergaard and Lacombe did their numbers, they had their bulk number, then they took all the discounts off of it and come up with their number, which was their delivery to dealer price, not the retail price. And then they took the deductions and the municipal benefit off. The way the local dealer appeared to run their numbers, they took the retail price, then took their incentives off, and that's where they landed on the $4,000 higher.
Okay, there's no tires for life or anything on a commercial vehicle, so.
Not that I'm aware of, no.
No, I just wondered if there was something, I mean, I like buying locally as much as we can, but it's, the numbers have to match too.
Yeah, with two of them, right tight like that, and once I saw how they did their math, explained, because I was looking for how can we have a $4,000 difference, what's different about the truck, turned out to be a difference in how they did their math and where they started, so.
Mr. Chairman, we still have the policy on board that we don't advertise any of we take off all the dealership advertising. We had that
I'm not
policy.
aware of that policy, but I don't generally run around.
Into an issue a few years ago with
Stettler Waste?
Stettler Waste and a couple of county trucks where there was a local dealer that had some issues with us buying from another dealer, and they made their concerns known, and I felt for them, but part of the deal is driving around with that advertising of another dealership. And I thought we'd made a policy that we stripped all of our county vehicles and associate vehicles without their dealership logos on them, so.
I don't believe we moved that in the policy, but I will look for the resolution and see if it's something we should move in the policy.
Okay, because was it for that one particular item, or was it for
What
everybody?
I'm thinking is that maybe the resolution was for that item, or maybe maybe the resolution read for that year. It's not something that we've carried forward for whatever reason, so however the resolution reads, we can bring it back to the policy committee and you guys can determine, the committee can determine whether they present that policy back to council.
Because a lot of them, you come in and they've got it across the whole back window or something like that, and it's.
And we've taken it off in the past, it's 30 seconds with the rubber eraser to take them off.
Mr. Chairman, from what I recollect, we did make a resolution, and I don't think it was just for the particular year. I think it was just kind of an open-ended resolution, so it maybe hasn't been done, but it was.
Well, we should follow up on that.
That was a resolution.
So is that-
Proper
would that
procedure would be
all?
make it into a policy.
Yeah, would that be all including the local one comes off, so that nothing's?
Including the local, we said that it would be everything so that we didn't advertise for anybody. So.
Yeah, I kinda do the same thing on my own vehicles, they put something on it, it comes off right away, or you're paying me to haul it around. So.
And if that's the case, my thought here would be that tell them to save their money and don't put the logo on, right?
Yeah, we can make that point with them when we call them, yeah.
Pretty much answered all the questions. Mine was, okay, what year it was, how many kilometers, you pretty much answered that. And then Silika, you had mentioned the picker, but you said, okay, the deck was also gonna be transferred over. So you answered them all. Thank you.
Councilor Grover's motion's on the table. Any comments? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Guess you check into it, Rick.
I will, make a phone call, see if we can tag that truck.
Now, request for decision, purchase used loader.
This is the Rick start the show.
I'll just stay put.
Oh, yeah, just, I'll tip us over if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, pretty self-explanatory as well, I believe. That said, we're trying to follow the direction of trying to find alternate ways to save money, as far as our budgets go and whatnot. So we have been very much like that water truck that we're currently, rebuilding into, well, a different truck into a water truck where we bought it used. I put a request for proposal out and left it open for a couple of months so that anybody with equipment can sort of propose what they have that might fit within our half budget instead of the full budget of new in the way of a loader. What we had done is we put half the new loader away this year in a reserve. The idea we'd buy a new one next year. This would save somewhere in that, $160,000, $170,000 in next year's budget to go with this type of a route. So of the ones that came in, we have the one from Brandt Tractor, which is used. It's bigger than what we had minimum requested. It's got a few more hours on it than what our desire was, but it looks like a good machine. It came out of their lease fleet, and it's bigger, so it's going to lift our scales better when we go move things instead of tilting the thing up. And subject to inspection, it just landed in Red Deer yesterday. But with your blessing and subject to our inspection, it looks like it's going to be a very good unit to really move that gravel program along this year. It's got a bigger bucket than what we run on the other ones, and should load the trucks a little bit faster and keep things rolling.
I'm just looking at the hours, Rick. Is that a lot of hours, or is it not?
It's sort of in that just coming off a warranty area. This particular one does not have warranty left on it. I have talked to Kerry quite a bit about where he feels things need to be, and on a loader, he doesn't see a lot of risk for the type of use that they get and the things that wear on them. There is always risk, but this particular one, because we're dealing with a dealership that it's coming off of their lease fleet, it's going through their shop entirely. I believe the risk is quite low, but we will be driving in to have a look at it and make sure that they haven't missed anything. Same type of thing we do with the used truck, is we put a serious stink eye on it, so.
Thank you. That was my question. So you are and the foreman, or both of you, are gonna go over and check the pins, and you're gonna check everything on this thing after it's went through the quality control?
Yeah.
I had a question, just also too, on that 21, that's third one down. It's a lot smaller unit. Is that because it's, not quite, $28,000 difference, 29,000, and it's almost new for ours. That Rocky Mountain equipment, the 21, is it a lot smaller loader?
That one, I believe, gets it down to the size category we were after. That said, we can look at that if that interests you to go a little more.
It's just, it's got 10, just about 10% of the hours. Is the only thing when I look through the package, is my thoughts. But.
Yeah, I think that's a series or rate group 6 machine, and the one we're looking at is a rate group 8. We did identify I didn't think I'd get one that big, that new, for the kind of dollars we had to work with. I figured I'd be waiting until next year if we had to go there. But something as simple as moving the portable scale around, they do a little bit of a dance right now trying to get that thing on the trucks and whatnot, where this thing will walk underneath and just pick it up and drop it down. There's a benefit that way.
Mr. Chairman, through to Rick, so, and I don't know typically when you do that, but I know you can go to like Maxim and get an oil analysis. Is that something you guys would do and pay for to do, to see?
We have all the service records, and that's another thing compared to going to an auction where you may or may not get all the records. They have all the records because it's a lease machine. They expected their lessee, I guess it's called, to run their maintenance program and provide them with the oil samples. So, and I did tell Kerry, we might be spending a little bit more on this than I can get it for in an auction, but I think the security of knowing who we're dealing with and where that machine's been and the maintenance program it's on makes a big difference.
And your second choice would be, if out of this list, what would your second choice be?
I never thought of that way.
I'm just wondering if we spent a little, I'm kind of leaning towards what Mr. Clark is leaning towards, that we spend a little bit more money and get a little bit newer piece, but the interesting thing about the case with 950 hours on it, it's a year older, right? Not that, I mean, there's not a huge styling difference when it comes to loaders.
Yeah, I believe there is a size difference on them. That said, you know, exactly why we bring it with you. I mean, we are shopping the used market and trying to do our best to figure out what suits our needs best, and that's the way we've recommended it, but if you want us to take a different.
No, I'm just, the only thing I don't wanna hamstring you for is that it has to be about money. I wanna get quality, but I wanna get a good value, so.
When I first started doing my research on this, I thought I was gonna get something with more hours and older, based on what I was seeing in Ritchie auctions and whatnot. I was actually quite elated to see, you know, what we had there. And then when I saw the size of that machine, and we started talking about what it can do compared to the two other ones that we have right now, it seemed pretty good. And they are putting a brand new bucket on it, because it wasn't a bucket loader before. It had, like a pipe grapple or something on it. We're getting a pipe grapple too, which is.
Would indicate it probably was, in a shop and stuff like that.
Counselor, I'll make the motion, Mr. Chairman, that we go forward just to have that discussion. We should be actually making the motion first. So, staff recommendation to purchase the 2015 John Deere 744.
Counselor Gender?
Yeah, so like I was looking at, say, like along both Nyberg and Clark's there, like with the 821, whether it's going to be the size, if you break down the hours, it was only operating, say, like at $10 an hour. There was, so like the size difference, that would be, say, like your choice in there. I also looked at, what's the price of a new 744?
Did we, it's a 724 they put on there. We were in that, well, we were at about half on what we had budgeted, so we were in that 350 range as far as the budget level pricing.
But it doesn't really do a comparison between, say, like the 724 and 744. I'm just kind of wondering, like, what rate it's in it. But also recognize that you've got a scale on that machine.
Yeah.
Something that would be beneficial for you when you go out and load trucks. You don't have a scale, more beneficial for the county on there.
Mhm.
Myself, I would like to make a friendly amendment to Mr. Nyberg's that we go up to, say, like the 205 or the 203 for the 821. To give you your choice in there, because if you look at, you can then go back and say, decide which one that you want to have in there, whether you, however you want to find that in finances. But I would like to open that up, give you that variance in there.
Go check them both out, make a choice.
Make them both out, so then you have option knowing which come back. The hardest part is going to be, say, like if it comes back with this, if something starts to happen with the used one, who's going to take the blame for it? I want to be able to open up another avenue for you.
Yeah, and, you know, honestly, to me, it's not about blaming. When you're buying used equipment, you are taking a bit of risk regardless. We're trying to mitigate the risk through understanding where it came from and the process they're following on delivery and whatnot, that it's going through their shop and everything else. You know, to have that option, I like it. I wouldn't mind checking them both out just to see where we're at, assuming it's even still there, the other one. I mean, we did find over the course of 2 months of proposals, you get a phone call, I got this, great, can you get something on, you know, to me on it, then you get, oh, nope, it's sold, sorry. You know, stuff comes in and it moves, and that was part of the issue. We had the same issue with the trucks, right?
I know it's slightly over, say about $30,000 more, but whether it's gonna be make or break or whether you get to the proper one, I would like to have that option opened up.
Are you okay with that, Councilor?
Mr. Chairman, I don't really have a disagreeing with it being a friendly amendment, but I would like to see the rest of council vote on it, so I will take it as a non-friendly amendment so that we get the opportunity to hear everybody's opinion on it. So we
On Councilor Gender.
discussion and vote on it. So if anybody wants to discuss the amendment, what we're dealing with right now is the amendment, and then if we, as a council, decide to go with it, I'm fine with it. I just think that everybody should have an opportunity to speak on the amendment.
I have one question before, for information for me to, so I can make a proper, decision as a voter. That one's got 8,000 hours on it. How long would we keep a loader like that if we got it tomorrow? How many years would we get, and how many hours would we keep it till we get rid of it? Roughly.
Well, we haven't really got rid of a loader lately, and the two we have are, what are those 8 years? They're like 07 and 09 or something like that, so they're 10, 12 years old, I believe. And those are, man, I gotta go look at the equipment list, honestly, but You know, we put probably, because it's a half a year's worth of work on those things, moving the gravel and whatnot, and the gravel program is building now compared to past years. They gotta be under 8,000 hours with older machines, so we're probably putting 1,500 hours a year on them, depending on how we're moving things around.
Okay, so we put 1,500 hours a year on this, let's just say, cause of this big loader, you're gonna use it more. How long can we go before you would be thinking about getting rid of that one with 8,000 versus the one that has 9,000 hours or 900?
Well, obviously at 1,500 hours a year.
Well, I know the difference between the two. I'm just, when this one was 8,000, I just wanna know when, are we gonna keep it 2 years, 10 years, 5 years?
If there's an interest in rolling equipment over when we get into the asset management plan for that more, we can look at that. But my intention is, based on the advice from Carrie, is that we're able to keep things like this running for a very long time. The biggest thing is gonna be, you know, the rust and the deterioration. We don't leave it parked in some salt sheds and those kind of things. You know,
So
basically.
we can get 8-10 years out of it, what you're telling me if we go with it.
I was looking at stuff that had 35,000 hours on it of that size, and somebody put those kind of hours on them.
That's what I wanted to know.
It may very well have been Mr. Gender, but it was lots of hours.
My wheel loader's got a lot more hours. And a hell of a lot older. And it still works, but, just along Mr. Grover's, thought pattern there, we do use this for snow removal, correct? So now, and I'm just for my edification, is it, are we gonna be able to move the bigger loader from point A to point B and use it for snow removal? And is it versatile enough to do that? I understand sitting in the pit and working in the gravel pit, it's great to have bigger.
Yeah.
But are we still, is it something that we would wanna utilize for snow removal?
Depending on the location, yes. I mean, the airport's a big one that takes a
Okay.
loader now. When we're small and the loader we have to clear the airport, it takes longer than we'd like. And we still move material all winter too, so I do have two other smaller, older loaders that, you know, one would sit sort of with the sand and the salt, hopefully not in that building, but in that general area, that so when we have an event, we move that. I don't have to move a loader when there's a snow event coming. I have one available at the yard to run to the airport and help out in the yard, and I have one working on the winter haul to move material around. That's where we're short right now. We're juggling machines on the gravel haul and during the winter and other seasons, moving them around where we need it, and that amount of moving is inefficient in itself. I don't see the size being a big issue at all.
That's fair
We have
enough.
a lot of big areas to plow, so.
No, that's fair enough.
I kinda checked out the prices. There was one, 2015 that I saw be for a Cat 950. It was running 200 grand. So like you're looking at a larger hoe or larger machine for lesser dollars on it. For weight wise, they're running about that 40 to 44,000 pounds, which is say about 22 ton, which you're more than capable. 22 ton is about what you're pushing for your triaxle that you've got now that you can haul. So it is well within the weight to build for you to carry around with this larger loader that you are proposed to.
We do find that we tend to road them around quite a bit as well, depending on the season, because we're trying to keep the truck moving the hoe around to do brushing and whatnot, so, depending on where we're going, we're more apt to just road it where we gotta go unless it's a long way.
Any other comments? Seeing none, if we can vote on in favor of the amendment?
On the amendment, not
On
in
the
the
amendment,
amendment. Don't try and lead the council.
I wasn't, sorry for the wording, but.
We all knew what you were saying.
All in favor?
I want a judicial review on that one.
All in favor? Opposed? Counselor Nixon's opposed.
So, Mr. Chairman, the amendment will read that we will have give them the option to purchase up to, whatever that.
3,900.
Well, no, I think it'll have to be 2,000 and, whatever, it's probably gonna be $210,000. So option A and option B being the Brandt tractor or Rocky Mountain equipment, one being the 2015 or the 2014, one being Case, one being John Deere. I'm not sure how the motion should read, because we should have a numbered, a dollar amount in there. Andrew, can you give me what 203,900 plus GST is?
You can just say that plus GST.
But there is also a technical repair cost of $2,100 on that other one, so there may be that cost on the Rocky Mountain equipment, so, I think we should give that total amount.
Yeah, I don't think that other machine had a scale on it either. So.
214 gets you your GST, or 214,095, so do you wanna make?
So it should be
215?
Well, I'm thinking if there is any technical amount, it should be up to 216,000 maybe.
That's the motion you wanna make?
Is that fair enough for you, Mr. Gender?
I'd like to be able to just have Rick make the option.
You bet, but we as council have to give him a dollar amount to spend. Up to $216,000 to either purchase option A or option B.
Or whatever may become available, like within the meantime, like Rick says that.
No, I wouldn't accept that, and I don't think that's what we voted on. I think what we voted on was to either purchase the John Deere or the case, and I think what has to be very clear. I'm not that I don't trust you, Rick, it's just policy, we can't send them out with a bunch.
Fairness to the process, you know, we have done RFPs, we've had responses, and, you know, what I'm hearing on the other side of things around here, our process, tightening that up is very important, and being direct on being fair to the people that are responding, so. Not that I wouldn't like a blank check, but, careful.
It's not enough to get you to Mexico for.
So, do we wanna hear that motion back then?
So I would, this is my suggestion, is that we authorize administration to purchase a loader for the amount no more than $216,000, with options A being the 2015 John Deere 744K2 loader, or option B, the 2014 Case 821F loader, being to be determined which is the best deal for operations by Rick Green. Does that make a good?
And 186.5 is in the budget, and so the remaining funds will come out of Public Works Capital Reserve.
You know, save some money on something else if that's the way it goes. We can
Just
choose-
I agree with
Foreman's wage.
having options.
$30,000.
Any other comments or questions? All in favor? Carried unanimously.
Simple as mud. You got that, Marlene?
8.6, request for decision, re-cemetery funding request, Erskine Cemetery, page 18 of our package.
Mr. Chairman, I had a visit from the treasurer of the Erskine Cemetery Club, and she asked me, how come we hadn't been sending her the annual grant of $1,000 a year, and I said, well, you have to apply for it by sending in your financial statements. If you've been approved once, then we just carry you over. She had found out that she had not applied for 16, 17, and 18, was asking that we fund those years plus 2019. So if we were to fund the entire 4,000 based on the cemeteries that I'm funding each year, we would go over, but we do have $3,000 in our reserve that we started last year. Or we could adjust or amend the budget to reflect this when we bring it back for you to set the mill rate.
It's $3,000 on your Erskine Cemetery.
Well, reading this, we don't have a policy that talks about retroactive either, and then also reading this, I found that we have retroactively helped somebody else, so I think unless we put it in policy in the future, we should probably retroactively help this out, and then if we don't want to do this in the future, we need to put this in policy, so I'll make a motion to, let's see, where's it, number 1? No, number 2. The recommendation to help them out for 16, 17, and 18, amount of 3,000.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make an amendment, and you can make it, that we pay 216, 17, 18, and 19 as requested in their request. I'm not sure why we wouldn't have that in there as an option for this year as well.
Yeah.
They technically didn't ask for 19, that's why it's not in there. They didn't technically request this year's yet.
It's gonna make her apply for 19.
I think just to simplify this, if we made the motion for 19 as well, that they're getting it.
How are you gonna teach them to apply annually if you don't make them?
I'm sure that they will apply annually. And to this council, I will guarantee that they will apply annually.
Although, don't we have to have their records to apply for 19?
They'll have to submit, they can apply now, and then by the end of the year, they submit their financials, right, Yvette? Yeah.
I really don't think it's a good idea to approve stuff that hasn't even been applied for. And I also don't really agree with retro payments back that far, because we're gonna have cemeteries coming out of the woodwork that realize that they lacked before, because a lot of them were operated by organizations and families, and then all of a sudden, when that wore thin, then they had groups maybe apply, but I don't know. I can't follow the argument that they didn't know it was gonna happen automatically after it didn't happen 3 years in a row or 4. Like, I don't follow that argument either. And obviously the cemetery was being well looked after without it, so I think if we're gonna open a can of worms if we go back that far, so I can't support that one.
The 3 years that they got into, they're going into a slight deficit each year. I believe this would help them in order to be able to cover that.
I think I would respectfully disagree with Mr. Gender on that one. They have had a financial officer change. It's just one of those ones that were overlooked, I think. I am, to be honest with you, Mr. Stolberg, if we had a large amount of people with their cemeteries show up and they're still looking after their cemeteries, I would be willing to spend the money on them as a community organization. If it's $3,000 to make sure that these organizations continue, I would be willing to pay $4,000 or $5,000 because they look after it well cheaper than we will ever look after it. I don't want to take on the administration of these small cemeteries. If we let them fold, they will become considerably more expensive for the county of Stettler to administer and manage. So this one-time shot, if we had a whole bunch that come through, I would be willing to make that as a motion as well, because it's something that is going forward. And to be honest, we have in 15 and 14 and before that, Erskine was on our plan, and part of the $15,000. The $3,000 that is in extra over and above, I almost would guarantee came from the fact that we didn't pay the Erskine Cemetery their money. So.
I was just thinking about James' friendly amendment. I don't think we need to add that in there because it is part of the policy, so they would just have to apply for this year and get this year without council approval, so I don't think we even need to. But the 19.
I'm good with that. I'll rescind my friendly amendment. I was just trying to clean things up so that it was done, and then we'll have to deal with it again later on, but that's fine.
They don't, yeah, you're right, Sheree, they don't need council approval, if they apply properly, so she can apply for 19 and it won't have to come to council. We have it in the policy to pay that out if they apply in the current year.
I'm sure she will.
Yeah.
No, we bring it once, and if you approve it, then we just put them basically into the routine, and the only condition is that they have to provide us with the financial statements every year.
Okay.
Right, so like earlier, or last meeting, remember when you approved the Botha Cemetery to be added to the list? That means that every year subsequent to this, if they apply with their proper paperwork, they will get $1,000 without council approval. But you need council approval to be added to the list.
Well, can Botha go back to 1911 and they can?
I have,
How come they can't and Erskine can go back 3?
well, because
They haven't applied.
council decided several years ago, I'm thinking probably a dozen years ago, that we wouldn't fund the village cemeteries. If they were owned by the villages, they were their cemeteries. Because Botha came back to us in 2017, and we virtually ran their cemetery for 17 and half of 18, and we did put quite a bit of funds out there to, I did a lot of repairs. And so then they wanted to know when the society took it over, if they could get on the list and get their annual grant. We said yes, but I had to bring it through council the first time.
other questions or comments?
Just one last comment. I think we are committed to funding cemeteries. There's no question about that. And we will continue to fund them. But I still have a problem with the retro.
Any other questions? Okay, all in favor? Opposed? No,
I rescinded my amendment.
Opposed, will be okay,
What's your motion that we're?
So,
all
I'm in favor of my motion.
Opposed? Opposed?
Mr. Grover voted twice.
No,
He's opposed?
I didn't vote the first time,
Okay.
and they said, they
I
opposed.
seen your hand up when I had my hand up for in favor.
We're still up from before, I'm just.
Your vote, Larry?
Opposed.
I was just trying to be clear. No, Dave, I just
seen your
stand up both for and opposed.
We're here, opposed.
Working both sides, you thought I was, oh, no. No, I think they all should be funded, the retro thing, I don't think so.
Pardon me, am I back up for a second before you carry on?
No.
Yes. Good information. Mr. Grover wanted information. We have people watching the thing in the office and they gave me information for him. Exactly for his question. I've got the two loaders we have. We have a 2002 Cat 950G with 15,000 hours on it. Still working. And we have a 2009 Cat 962H with 8,400 hours on it. Gives you an idea of the longevity of what we're doing with these. So this would actually be the youngest loader we have, and so if we push on with either one of those, so. So I got excited because somebody gave me information and I didn't have my phone with me, so I had to back you up a little.
For clarification, Mr. Chairman, so paying back the retroactive has, didn't pass. So basically, I can ask the Erskine Cemetery to apply for the 2019 funding.
That was defeated. The retroactive payment
No,
was defeated.
But defeated, but the 19 funding I can bring forward to you at the next meeting.
You don't have to, Erskine's already on the approved list.
Yeah, they would have been 15, right? Before the treasurer changed, so they would
I
have.
would double check that, if
So
not, I can.
here's, okay, Mr. Chairman, then I have a question. If they were pre-approved, how come we didn't send them a check?
We don't just send them, they have to apply.
Apply, they have to bring us their financial
And
statement.
they have to give us their financial statement.
Financials every year, right?
Councilor Grover?
Fair enough.
They have to bring financials every year and then they get $1,000, away they go. If they don't bring their financials, even the other ones don't get paid.
So, Mr. Chairman, they brought the financials for 2018. When do they have to bring the financials in?
I get them all over the place. Yeah, they bring them in January to December. As soon as I get them, if they don't look really wacky, like they're sitting on $1 million reserve or something, then I will approve them.
So, I mean, this is definitely part of my area too as well. So they provided us with the 2018, so are we going to pay them for the 2018?
You've got 16, 17, and 18 there.
Right on, and I get that. So when do they have to provide the 2018 financials to get the 2018 money? The year ended at December 31st, so they can't give it to you then. Would they come in on the 28th? What do we allow them to do? This is now March. It's only 3 months. I have till April 1st to file my taxes. So are we going to allow them to take the 2018 money?
Well, when they apply for their 2019 here right away, they will use their 2018 budget. It's always 1 year behind because you can't apply.
Right, and I have cemeteries that run all different year ends, right?
So I do have.
In the count, Andrews want to clarify something.
Just in response to your question, I was able to pull the policy. The policy requires you apply within the current year with your previous year's statement. So they can use the 18 financial statement to apply for the 2019 funding in the 2019 year.
Okay, but it is actually, so it'll be for the 2018 budgeted year for them.
No, because it will still go on their 2019 revenues. It's just to show us that they are in good standing.
Right.
Based on the December 31 of the previous year, that they're in a good standing and that they don't have a giant reserve that they don't need.
Fair enough, yeah.
Pull up and see if they got funding in 16 for 15. Because we could be over guessing how much they wanted. Maybe they were just wanting the $3,000, which would actually be 17, 18, and 19.
Yeah, I can double check that.
we've never dealt with this before, so I'm just,
We had the Our Lady of Immaculate Conception Cemetery that got behind, and, but they were really having a tough time financially, so we,
And that was just, we only retroactively paid 1 year.
Yeah.
In that last, and that's the only other case where we've paid retroactively, so you may wanna consider maybe not paying 3 years, maybe 1 year.
Give me a second to pull that up.
you can honor, he can come back, or whatever you'd like.
And further to that too, we can look at the policy again, we did review this one recently, but, we didn't really, see the need to deal with retroactive payment statuses, so we can bring that back to policy.
so, Mr. Chairman, since we have paid retroactively 1 year in the past, I'd like to make the motion that we pay 1 year retroactive to the Erskine Cemetery as well.
Or just to clarify, got that information, we have not paid them since 2015. June of 2015 was their last payment they received.
Even with their 14-year financials.
So we have precedent that we've paid one year, so I would make the motion that we pay for. No, actually, that one is in Dave's area.
Okay.
So we paid in Dave's areas.
Questions, comments? We have a motion on the table?
So clarification, then basically $2,000 we give to the Erskine Cemetery?
You'd give 1,000 retroactively, and then they will make application for the current year, which has nothing to do with
Well,
council.
if their 18 financial statements are in here and they run a calendar year, then they're
Then they
basically
basically
applying
apply.
for 19.
So, yeah, so you would use, basically, they're gonna miss out on one of the retroactive years, 2 of them.
Okay. Questions or comments?
So you made the motion to do.
Just to
that.
pay 1 year of the retroactive, and then they will apply for the 2019 as usual and normal and get it in.
Okay, the motion on the.
I wanna make a comment on this. So when we give the money to that other one, though, they showed you the books and they were in financial problems, right?
This was at this was at the formation of this policy. That particular incident that happened at that point was when we started to form this cemetery fund and when this policy came into effect. So it was to save cemeteries like that.
And we, I would safely say that the county goes above and beyond to help the caretakers of these cemeteries, because they are tough for us to get around. And we were actually looking after the one beside it, the Ewing Lake Cemetery. And it was tough getting equipment out there and getting things done. So actually then, I think Bernie came forward at that time, asked if she could look after both of them, and asked if she could have the grant. And so basically, they didn't have a lot of money even to start with. We've got cemeteries that are, barely making it for the year, but we also have to realize that most work done at cemeteries is done by dedicated volunteers. And we have cemeteries that have lots of money, but we're part of their business plan, and we're part of how they maintain their cemetery every year. So it's just a grant. It's a $1,000 grant. So we give it forward. We wrote the check out to individual people to help them with their maintenance, and we wrote the checks out to societies.
Councilor Gender?
This is reminding me of kind of like the urban, the rural, the way politics is working. If you're closer to an urban area, the larger the cemetery, that you get kind of preferential treatment. And yes, I'd like to build a look at it, everyone gets the same treatment. It doesn't matter if there's a cemetery. There's one little cemetery on the south side of the Erskine Overpass, 2 little bodies that are in there. And they've never applied for that, but at least like the Huttery colony there, they have fenced it off. They have kept their animals out of there. It's never been registered, I don't
Well,
believe.
don't tell them they'll be in for $1,000 too.
That one was discovered when the power line went through, and now we traced it back.
There's cases like that all over Alberta. I know we had family buried in the middle of somebody's pasture, and I think when the landowners either choose to pay respects to that and fence it off, like they have at the Erskine Overpass, or they don't. But I don't know if those meet the definition of cemeteries under the Cemeteries Act.
Any other questions or comments?
We'll comment that when we looked at this, we kind of giggled a little bit because they seem to be running a $1,000 deficit every year. So that's,
Not a deficit.
well, they're kind of going in the hole, $1,000 a year.
I don't think they've ever run a deficit.
Okay, if there's no other questions or comments, Mr. Nyberg has a motion on the table. All in favor? Opposed? Carried, unanimous. Okay. Request for decision, South Shore IDP meeting request.
Mr. Chairman, we had a request from Mr. Dave Hammond, his lawyer, at the last council meeting about championing a revision to the South Shore Buffalo Lake IDP, and I felt that we should bring this request forward to see how council wants to handle it. We do probably owe Mr. Hammond, his attorney, a response, so it's open for discussion, but I just didn't want to have it drop off.
Page 23 of our package, Councilor Needs.
Just doing some research on this, I figure that we need to follow the process that we are doing. The Buffalo Lake IDP is coming up for review, and so is the South Shore. The South Shore is the South Shore does minor reviews every 2 years, and that started in 2015. And a major review was due for 2018, so that one is coming up. So I think we will need to do that one as it comes up and do the whole process. And then the Buffalo Lake IDP, that one comes up for minor review in 2019, so that's this year too. I believe if we're making any changes to the South Shore IDP, it needs to coincide with the Buffalo Lake IDP, so they need to coincide with each other. And I think also waiting on the court's decision, we should do that because that will also probably affect any changes in either of the IDPs.
You're making
So I think we need to wait until the Court of Queen's Bench is made, and then we do need to continue to follow this process, which both of them are coming up for review. According to the IDPs themselves.
Councilor Gender?
Even if they do start meeting with the IDPs, how long does it in order to take to get all this ratified between the three municipalities, especially for the South Shore?
$1 million question.
Well,
We'll all be on a different council by then.
you have to find a date, get a meeting. It'd be the representatives. Sherry's our representative. I think Lauren is a representative for White Sands. I think Councilor Nichols is a representative for Russell Sands. So we got to find a common date that would work. We have to review the minutes, which could take a little bit at this first meeting because none of the minutes have been approved. They've been circulating around, but they haven't been approved. So I think it's an important step to get those minutes adjusted, amended, or approved, and then to bring forward recommendations or questions or have an open discussion to see how the committee wants to work, because they're the ones that will initiate the review of the South Shore Buffalo Lake IDP.
Just in response to that as well, so this first meeting would be a pretty light meeting to discuss those minutes, and then it would probably be the meeting where the expectations around timeline would be established. A major review process isn't short by any means, but sort of kind of that get your toes wet and figure out where each municipality is at, and that'll give you a better idea. Because a review could be a short process or it could be a long process, but I think it's trending towards a longer process.
Councilor Nyberg?
Mr. Chairman, I think we are being a little bit premature here. The plan states out that we should be doing it in 2019, barring any issues that would arise that would not allow it to happen. I think we need to really seriously wait for the Court of Queen's Bench to make a decision. We could even have the light meeting, but we as council, I don't think would be able to give our representative any direction because until that decision comes down, we don't know which direction we were going to go into. Are we gonna wanna make major changes, or are we going to make minor changes? This is a request from a developer. I get his need to be, need for speed, I guess, as it were. But I think we need to let the process finish, and then we can go forward with what decision we're gonna make. And if it's, the start of it is in December of 2019 or November of 2019, that is where we can be at. But I don't think we have to be in a big hurry, nor should we be. So I would think we could, postpone this till the fall even, if that's the case. If we get a Court of Queen's Bench decision right away, then we can look at moving the timeline up. But till then, I think we wait.
So is that an amendment then, or that's just your?
I don't think there is any motion on the table right now.
No, I need the motion that we,
Your motion?
yeah,
Number 2,
Then you said follow the process.
and follow the process for the South Shore IDP and Buffalo Lake, because they do need to coincide.
Just one very small minor issue, just a minor typo in that particular recommendation. It says Court of Queen's Bench, it's actually the Court of Appeal. We're waiting to make a decision, so the motion should
Yeah,
reflect.
so you guys can fix the words.
I'd be looking for, instructions, I guess, whether we respond, to Mr. Ham with his request, or have our attorney respond, which I'm leaning towards having our attorney respond, that council has considered his request and, wants to wait until the Court of Appeal decision is rendered.
I think that should be a separate motion, Mr. Chairman.
So we'll have the motion that's Councilman Needs has on the table right now, number 2. Any other comments?
So just so I'm clarifying, that you want to make sure that the process doesn't have to start right away, it's just that we follow both the South Shore Plan and the Buffalo Lake IDP together, is that what you're saying?
Well, whatever, South Shore actually comes up before for review. The major review for Buffalo Lake, I think, is 23, but we still need to follow those processes.
Right, okay, so just if you could clarify for me, what would we be doing in 2019 after the Court of Queen's Bench decision?
We will need to follow the process and start the South Shore IDP, because on here it says we needed to start that review last year, and we didn't, so 2019 is a year behind.
So, but it doesn't, nothing starts till, so what happens if the Court of Queen's Bench doesn't, or Court of Appeal doesn't come till January of 2020?
These are suggested dates.
Well,
Council can make
Yeah,
a recommendation.
that's what I'm saying, what I'm saying is I kind of want to know what we're going for here.
one of the reasons why it wasn't brought up in 2018 is there's a lot of specifications that needs to be done before it can even be done. So one of them was undertaking the investigation into highway upgrades, improvements, the regional water servicing business plan, regional sanitary service business plan. So all in the stormwater and the shoreline management plans between scenic sands and white sands. So those are a lot of things that need to be done first before we can even go into that review for the South Shore.
Can I clarify that, Councilor Nyberg?
I did. I'm just wondering when that will take place, which the timeline. So it's still, all it is holding on to the Court of Appeal. Okay, that's all we're gonna, fully well knowing that it could take till after 2020, even if that's the case.
Okay, everybody understands the motion? All in favor? Opposed? Councilor Nixon's opposed.
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion that we send a letter to Mr. Ham. Administration can decide whether they want to send it through our lawyers, just stating what we've done here in this motion and going forward with it. It's a due process that we have to follow.
Okay, any questions, comments on that? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried unanimous. Request for decision, physician recruitment funding, page 24 of our package.
Mr. Mr. Chairman, that's yours.
Yes, the physician recruitment group met, and went through what was, had been discussed with the doctors, 3 doctors from the 2 clinics. And, it was recommended from that, we bring back to our councils to pay the doctor in question, his payment for coming to our community. But then we have clear, we ensure that the committee has a policy implemented outlining the criteria and procedures for awarding recruitment incentives. So, I guess I would make that motion.
No, Mr. Chairman, you don't typically make a motion.
I can if I need to, but.
Yeah, but typically you would leave it to one of, just so you're not looking like you're leading council down. You got Mr. Grover would like.
Mr. Grover, make that motion.
I sat on that board too, and, no, there will be no more, doctors won't be making the decision that everything will go through the system like it should. And, hopefully we don't have this problem ever again.
Mr. Chairman, just one thing to the doctor recruitment committee. I know AHS has basically said that we don't need any more doctors. I think it would be very wise and prudent to explain to AHS now that our new current doctors are a different doctor. I'm not saying they're worse. I'm not saying they're better. They're a different doctor. Their lifestyle, as the young families and young physicians that are out there, they put lifestyle as the forefront. They're not working the same amount of hours, and they're not working the same amount of clinic time as some of our previous doctors. I think it's prudent for us to send a letter to AHS and say that, you know, the allotted amount of physicians from 1981, when they did the policy, I think, back of how many physicians each community should have, is considerably different to the allotted physicians that we need today. These physicians that we have today value family, value, and I'm not saying our old physicians didn't, it was just a different mindset. The fact that we could use 2 more or 3 more doctors in this community, I mean, I don't know if anybody else has trouble getting a doctor's appointment or seeing a physician, but I think it's something that we should definitely make AHS aware of, that it's important that they look at it as a 2020 physician recruitment, not 1985 physician recruitment. So what are those doctors? How are they dealing with patients, and how are they dealing with clinical hours, and even not staff time at the hospital? So, yeah, this is the opportunity to talk about it, Mr. Chairman. So.
Councilor Nixon?
Mr. Chairman, I'd just be interested in knowing if the doctor in question got an incentive to go to Hannah too when he first came there, because you know, it's sort of double dipping, and it just and I don't think it may not be illegal, but it's unethical in my opinion. So I think our committee, our criteria definitely needs some changing, our policies to address some of these things.
At our previous meeting, that was talked about, whether he received it or whether he didn't. They couldn't confirm. Even the organization that he went into and replaced the 1 doctor, they couldn't confirm whether he got received or not.
I guess, Mr. Chairman, I guess it kind of puts us in a bad light to other communities that are even more remote than ours. You know, like you get into special areas or farther east, you know, of taking their doctors away, which has happened in the past. You know, some of the doctors who had established practices, I believe, came here with the incentive.
We've taken, I think, about 4 now from Hannah. I feel for
I just, you know, it's
General area, not really Hannah.
I just think our policy needs reworking, I guess is what I'm saying.
There really isn't much of a policy, is what we found, so we need to make a policy.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Councilor Gender?
I wonder, okay, if they're paid in order to come into a community, should these doctors have to maybe put something into the kitty to help recruit another one to fill their position that they just vacated.
Well, that's paying and taking at the same time. Yeah. Okay, if there's any other questions or concerns on that, Counselor Grover has the motion on the table. All in favor? Carried unanimously. Okay. Okay, request for decision, aggregate levy and reclamation rate stakeholder engagement date, page 25 of our package.
Sean, do you wanna read this one, please?
Sure. So we are just continually doing research on when the best timing is to explore an aggregate levy. And then of course, with recent applications for gravel pits, we also need to do some work on what we're charging for reclamation guarantees, basically. So we thought that it would be a good idea before we made decisions on either of those to have stakeholder engagement, and we thought since it involves the same stakeholder group, we'd do it now and we'd do it sooner rather than later. With the community aggregate payment levy, I was under the impression, and I think I passed that information on to you, that we needed to pass this before April of a current year. There is actually no deadline for passing an aggregate levy. It's whatever you feel is fair to the, to the ratepayer. So you may want to give the gravel pit owners a year to be able to budget for it. So if we pass it this year, it might come into effect January 1st, 2020. So we do have a little bit more time to work on the passing of that. You can also give them a quarter, 2 quarters. You can do it right away.
24 hours.
24 hours. It is up to you. It's just before we do that, our public engagement policy says that we should have some engagement with those stakeholders, and I feel like it's a good idea. Then you've basically notified them that it's on our radar, and give them a chance to give any kind of input on the implementation of those 2 things. So what would be presented there is both a draft reclamation rate policy with the rates that we have been talking about during those gravel pit applications at MPC, and also a draft aggregate levy at its very base form, to show them what it would look like and how it would affect them and how the reporting structure would look like. And then we can take it from there based on their feedback and feedback through our discussions. So I just would like you to choose a date, and I gave you a list there at the bottom of which ones you think might work. And then we did pre-check these in your scheduling calendar, and I think they're all available. So it would just be your personal calendars that would be.
Councilor Gender, you, and then Councilor Nixon, Councilor Needs.
Just I'll start the motion. I'll go for number 1. That we start opening the debate with. Like, I guess the problem that I find is like when you, especially like if we try to implement it immediately, there's going to be some gravel contractors that are going to have contracts already in place without a price into it. So that's what we've got to be very leery of. But how long do we let some of these go? Whether it's going to be 1 year, 5 year, it's going to be very touchy issues on it. But that's where I'll like to start the debates, please.
That's a motion.
Yes, number 1.
What dates have you in your motion?
April 2nd.
I guess very much open to any of the dates.
For me, it works better April 3rd.
Councilor Stiller.
April 2nd's not my choice either, so I would prefer 3rd or 4th.
Mr. Chairman, I'm just wondering, where would you hold the consultation? Are we talking just in Stettler, or where would we hold it?
We were actually thinking of holding it in this office. The gravel pit operators are spread out throughout the county.
No, that's fair enough.
And we may structure it as a longer come and go period, where we can sit down and have private conversations. We may structure it as a presentation. We may do both. We haven't worked out exactly how the presentation will go, but just that we feel like Stettler Central and we can use our own office for that.
Okay, can we do a straw poll on dates? April 2nd was already taken off. Who's in favor of April 3rd? It looks like that's.
Is there any objection to April 3rd on your part, Ernie and Dave?
I like the first best.
We tried to avoid the first.
You are the date that you picked, David. April 4th works for me as well, so if you'd like to give them 2 dates, and April 4th work for you too? Yeah, please.
It's
Not as good, but I can rework my schedule if we have to do it the 4th.
It will be and just so that you know, it will be an evening meeting. We feel like we don't wanna have them take time out of their, business time if they're working or hauling. We don't know what the conditions will be like at the beginning of April, whether they'll be hauling or not, but.
Your motion will read April 3rd or 4th, whichever works best.
And also in conjunction with administration.
And also the county office, so. And that's the county office.
Yes, please.
Okay, questions, comments, all in favor? Carried unanimously.
You'll send that out to council scheduling.
You bet.
Thank you. Get through these or
Break for lunch.
We got 2 minutes, let's do it.
Okay, request for decision, ASCHA conference attendance, page 27.
Mr. Chairman, this is another annual, we send usually Councilor Grover and Councilor Nyberg to the ASHA conference. Get my button out here. This year it's in Edmonton, April 15th to 17th, or Enoch, sorry. Same thing.
Yes,
Yeah.
the First Nations.
Counselor,
I'd like to move that we approve the attendance at ASHA for councilors Grover and Nyberg to attend.
Counselor Gender.
I'm wondering who's gonna chaperone who.
I'm the elder, remember?
Counselor Needs.
I just have a question. Did they send this out late to you guys? Because sometimes it is later. I was just noticing the registration fees. You could get it cheaper if you.
We've already registered.
Already.
Oh, you already did? Oh, okay.
Betty registers before the deadline for sure.
That's good. The housing authority pays your convention fees and we just pay the per diem.
Any other questions? All in favor? Were you in favor, Mr. Grover?
Yes.
Yeah.
Short wave.
Request for decision, redonation, page 34.
It's pretty self-explanatory. We got word last week that Joanne had passed away. Yes, we hired her. She worked for us, but we did get an opportunity to get to know her. She was a very nice and knowledgeable person. I think that we all learned quite a bit from her. We just thought she had no funeral. Didn't ask for any donations to be made anywhere, but we were very aware of her love for animals, and she had taken quite a few dogs because she had them in her motorhome at the STAB hearing. That'll be my best memory of Joanne, is out walking her dogs on every break. We thought it would be nice to make a $100 donation on behalf of the county to a local animal rescue association.
I'd make that motion, Mr. Chairman,
Questions or comments?
unless Dave wanted to make it.
No.
We'll make a co-motion.
I think it's a good idea. Good lady, works hard and did some good for the county.
Any other questions or comments? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Okay, lunchtime.
for lunch, Mr. Chairman? Yes.
Thank you. What do you mean I have to?
get back from lunch.
Right back, go ahead. I'm ready.
Make her work. Hey. Just go ahead, start on. Next item on the agenda is bylaws. We have a delegation coming in at 1:30, so bylaws 11.1, bylaw 1609-9. Village of Big Valley Intermunicipal Development Plan for first reading and set public hearing, page 35 of our package. Who speaks on the bylaw?
Jacinta and Karen.
Okay. Clerk.
Come up to the front, ladies, so we.
So, thank you. So, we did amend the Big Valley IDP to include section for amalgamation or an annexation, rather not annexation. I'll just tell you what section, because it's highlighted in yellow in your document. Urban expansion and annexation. It's on page 15. So that was the only amendment we've made since the open house. And so we're just bringing it for first reading and to set a public hearing for April the 10th, the next council meeting. Do you have any questions on the amendments or the existing agreement? Or not agreement, but the bylaw?
I'll move first reading.
What, that will be next meeting?
And the next council meeting. And we'll advertise it as well prior to.
All in favor? Carried, unanimous. Okay, so 11.2, bylaw 1610-19, Village of Denalda Intermunicipal Development Plan for first reading and set public hearing.
And the same process as the previous intermunicipal development plan with the village. We had our open house in Big Valley, or Denalda, on February 13th. And so we are ready to proceed with the public hearing process. And this would be the first reading, followed by the second reading and adoption, possibly after the second reading and the public hearing.
Mr. Nixon?
Mr. Chairman, with the public hearing to be next council meeting, the 10th, second reading.
Questions, comments? All in favor? Carried.
To add, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to thank Jacinta and Kara for stepping out of their comfort zone to at the last two public public meetings, I guess, the open houses in Denalda and in Gaspé. Thanks, ladies.
Hey, reports. Chief Administrator's Officer's report. Did everybody went through that? That's page 93.
Self-explanatory. Do you have any questions? Lots of graphs.
Yeah, so protective services changed the way they report their incidents, so you'll be receiving those graphic reports as opposed to the numerical.
Questions or comments on that report? Councilor Stilberg?
I will move the report we received for information.
All in favor? Carried. Financial reports. Accounts payable, check register, accounts electronic funds transfer, accounts Visa, bank reconciliation January 31st, 2019, reserves January 31st, 2019, and year-to-date budget report January 31st, 2019. Any
questions on that? On any of those reports? Yes.
That was me, I can answer.
That was
The RMA meeting, yeah.
That's what, we bought soap and muscle bomb and lip jack and.
Yep. Yeah, we had giveaway baskets at the RMA meeting, and also we've switched internally to have fragrance-free soap, and Fresh Wife is also our supplier of fragrance-free soap throughout our facility. Yes, they are a local company.
Very local. Inside job.
Any other questions? Mr. Nixon?
The financials, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Gender?
It's on, Quentin's payments there. I just went,
What page number?
it's page 145, second from the top. For Pampas.
That's where you can get the.
Yes, I guess it's just one that I just look at those and just want council to recollect whoever's going to be there, like the dollars that are being spent, both spoiling us, that it is something for us to to recognize it. Because I don't know if there was about 8 of us that were there, so it's, I'll have to say yes, it was a fine meal, but just to be cognizant of like the expenses that some of these departments are going through for us.
None. Councilor Nixon has a motion on the table. All in favor? Carried. Councilor fee sheets. Page 162. Councilor Gender?
Yes, I've just got one on there. It would be for the heck was it? The county awards. Just a little discrepancy between, say, like some of the members on charging.
A lot of them were put down, but they didn't charge.
What was that? What for what, Mr. Gender?
For the awards, community awards. I guess like there were several of us that never put anything down, no charge on it. So like just like with less, so you had put yours down, and it was a half a day on there.
I didn't really look that closely at it, but every other year I thought they were charged out, so I just did it again. But I can take it off.
I'm just kind of wondering, like, is there any consistency in something like that? I believe it's in the policies that if there's a statement made or someone goes up, but it's like, is it really justified just to say like welcome people for us to be able to charge, say like even for a half a day? I'm just kind of wondering, okay, where do we start maybe donating, say like back to the community, because we are supplied with a meal that night.
I think less you get paid for it. I have no problem with that. That hole's only 5 miles from my place, that's why I didn't put in for it.
I have no problem taking it off. I just thought it was what we normally did, but I'd like to be consistent with the rest of the council too.
Sounds good. Nobody's spoken.
I'll make the motion, move 'em.
Usually, now I've been keeping all the time sheets and I don't let them go till, I let them go all together and then I try to keep them all.
I'll move the fee sheets to stand the way they are.
I have a question on February 1st, Ernie, you went to school for the Central Zone CMRA? Oh, it's Stettler Community Hall. Oh, okay, I've got it. Okay. Very destination. Okay, I've never referred to it as that. I always usually just put Stettler down. So there you go.
School.
Table.
Leave them the way they are. Thank you.
Schmartz comes with it.
All in favor? Gary, are you in favor, Council Member?
I just had some other questions about how we did the open house too for ATCO, and I'm with Mr. Gender on this. We should maybe kind of have a little bit of a. I see people charged for the ATCO billing, and some people didn't. So to me, this leaves our council at a little bit of an odds with what we are billing and what we're not billing. I see Mr. Grover billed for it, and I billed for it.
There was, ATCO and Denell at the same time, so
I billed half a day for it.
either half a day and went to both.
Mine was half a day and went to both of them.
And I tried to keep it consistent that way.
I just noticed some did not bill for it and some did. That's why I'm saying that they're where we're at. I did not bill for it. I figured that we didn't get, council full day in, so, but.
But I noticed that they lumped it together though, that's the two.
Well,
Chairman, I think that this is just a suggestion that maybe the policy committee should look at this and come back with some recommendations to council to sort of review what we may and may not charge and for. I never charge for the Denaldo open house because I don't normally charge for anything that's in my own area. So, but that's my decision. But you're right. If everything was the same, it would make it much easier for me.
In the past, a lot of times we would, and what I used to do, and I still do a little bit with Les, and if are you billing for this or you're not billing for this, but yeah, I think it would behoove us, I think, to clarify this and make a little bit of a, just so everybody's on the same page, just so that we're not questioning every 5 minutes what's going on.
Removed. All in favor? Opposed? Nyberg opposed. Okay, council committee reports. Any questions on 12.4.1 to 12.4.6? Councilor Needs?
Not questions, but just that they, we're still waiting to hear back from the government about the mooring policy.
And I know they want to do something by the spring, but we're not sure what's gonna happen. So we're just kind of waiting on that. That was on Buffalo Lake Management Team, yeah.
Just a question to James, like you're saying the house of, or like they were 70 grand over, what was the budget on there?
That was so to fill you guys in a little bit, the Alberta government has been, in the last 4 years, phenomenal to senior housing in the Stettler area. We have gotten close to $3 million in grant money that it's been unprecedented in seeing. We've had the minister out twice to our small lodges in our area. So I think the advocacy that we're doing makes a big difference. I do talk to the minister on a regular basis, so I'm not saying that that's what helps, but I do think or that's not the reason, but I definitely think it helps. This one in Big Valley was phenomenal. So we had done sidewalks, stoops, and some landings out the back, put out the quote. The original budget was for about $100,000. They split it into two projects. One project came locally, and one project went to another company in Central Alberta that does a lot of work in Stettler. Both quotes came back. The one was like $96,000, and the other one was $74,000. So, it was $170,000 total budget. $100,000 was the original budget, and they just approved it. Bang, stamp. So. Without even any questions asked. So don't look a gift horse in the mouth. Make sure the check gets written before it gets cold, and away we go, right? So.
And I'd just like to highlight one point in my Parkland Regional Library report. It's in here, but just the fact that I think you'll recall at RMA, I spoke to the Justice Minister about that caveat that was just sort of never coming off that property in Lacombe. And then on December 21st, they removed the caveat. So maybe it does help to jar memories. And I think it's just good. It shows, I guess, ratepayers everywhere that there are advantages of using those opportunities to meet with government in Edmonton each fall. So I just wanted to bring that up.
They already done?
No, I don't think reports have been done yet.
I'll move them.
Any other questions or comments? Or clarification? All in favor? Carried. Consent agenda items. 13.1 Federation of Canadian Municipalities Asset Management Road Map Project, 179. Are you, okay.
It's just for your information, basically.
Okay, so they're all for our information.
Right, and you might want to, East Central's looking for a donation, Nikki?
The railway?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're going to be running a fundraising trip on May 11th from Stettler at 1 p.m. and they'll be talking about how the railway influenced communities and farms along its length. And they're looking for funding. They're wanting to bring more tourism to our area for educational trips like this.
Question, did somebody make a motion?
I've made a motion to receive for information, but go ahead.
I was just determining that could we put a caveat against the Central Alberta Railway just to ask that to make sure they do their development permits, asking for money.
I don't take that as a friendly amendment.
For information, all in favor? Carried. RCMP Heartland Victim Services Regimental Ball.
They sent over 8 tickets, right?
No, there's no tickets. That's an opportunity for you to consider. This ball is held in our area once every 5 years. And so they just were looking for some funding support or perhaps to buy a table at the event.
What we usually do.
Yeah, no, that's they're trying to continue funding. I'm getting at 2019 levels, which because we got that extra boost in 18 is basically $1 million short of what we got the year before. And that the MSI does conclude in 2022, so I'm not sure this is good news. The next one's just wondering if you'd be interested in putting that bid into post the 2022 winter Alberta Winter Games or the 2023 Alberta Summer Games.
I'll make a motion to receive these for information.
Comments? All in favor? Great. Hey, I believe we have our next delegate, your 130 delegation. Okay. We'll start with introductions, and you can move up into here, please, but we'll start with Marlene.
Gender Stettler. Good afternoon.
Sri needs first and Metro Lake.
James Nyberg, Erskine South Warden, Counselor.
Nick Cassidy, CL.
Mark Botha Gadsby and Reeve.
Gabe Grover, Big Village Counselor.
Wayne Nixon, I'm Art.
West Over.
Nikki Thorstensen, Communications.
Legislative Services.
It's my turn.
Who's picture taken of?
Oh, there you go.
Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to listen to the next political contestant.
You get it.
It's not quite as fun as The Price is Right.
Must be gonna be better. You got a bigger card.
I guess that's one way to look at it. So, I'll just give you a really quick background of who I am. So for those of you who don't know me, Mark Nakota, I grew up in Fort Saskatchewan up by Edmonton. I lived in our riding for well over 20 years now. My first job out of school was in Stettler here with the Treasure Branch, back when it was still across from the Legion downtown. I was there for about a year, and then I transferred over to the Treasure Branch in Hannah. I was there for another 4 years or so. And then I was with the credit union. I started a credit union in Hannah. I was there for about 11 years. So I'm still living in Hannah. So like I said, I've been there for over 20 years. While I was at the credit union, I was the mayor for a term.
And now I'm actually the CAO in the village of Delia, so I've sat on
both sides of the desk here, so I know lots of the municipal challenges that we're all facing. With the Alberta Party now, the party's been around for obviously quite a while, but I've been involved with them for over a year, and I really like where the direction the party is headed and stuff. So that's a real quick just highlight of who I am and where I'm from. But obviously, I hope to have a lot of questions about policy and ideas and community building and stuff from yourselves. So.
What's next? Mark, it's I know down in your country things are a bit nervous with the the threat of the power plant changing to gas, because you're going to lose a lot of jobs, and the housing market is kind of tough in Hannah right now. So I just wondered what's your take on how to rise above that?
Yeah, no, that one hit us back. When was the climate plan announced? 2015, I think it was. Really hit us really hard. I was actually just talking to our mayor, Chris Warwick. He was the mayor at the time, and he was blindsided by it. The press was phoning him the day it got announced, and he hadn't heard anything about it. So it's been a bit of a shock, and of course an adjustment. I guess back up on the coal plants and stuff. It's going to be tough, but we all did know, everybody in Hannah, and I've got lots of friends that work at the coal mine and the power plant. We knew eventually that plant was either going to have to transition or it was going to close. Different estimates put it, 2025, 2030, depending on how the coal seam went. So the hardest part about it is that when the government announced that change with the plan, the climate leadership plan, is that there was no mitigation or transition plan for the community. So, I've been actually going up to school in Edmonton, and I've talked to lots of people there in classes, took an energy class, and we were talking about, because it got announced at that time, and they said, well, I said, that's, 200 to 300 jobs in Hannah. That's a big deal for us, right? And one of the comments was, well, is that any different than 200 or 300 jobs in Edmonton? I said, well, not job for job. If you lose your job, you lose your job. But I said, that's 10% of our population, right? That's like 100,000 jobs in Edmonton. And you can see kind of the light bulb started to go on. So it's the lack of a transition plan for the community. Because there's other plants like Forestburg, Wabamun,
they're in different situations. You know, Wabamun, they can hopefully get a job in Edmonton and not even have to move as a family, right? Whereas people losing their job in Hannah, if they want a similar job, they're moving. So the community loses not only a worker and a job, but they lose a family. So the school loses children, the wife, if she had a job, maybe she was a nurse or something, so we lose that in the community. So the real shock was, what are we going to do as a community? I'm actually working with, there's a transition, the task force that they set up to mitigate and look for other alternatives. So come up with other alternatives, like they were trying to work with special areas on the solar project. That had some legs for a while, then the government kind of kiboshed that. Personally, I'm actually working with a group on a project called Retire to Hannah. So it's about advertising what we have as a community and trying to attract active baby boomers and stuff to start that want to move out of the big urban centers. So sell a $500,000 home in Calgary, move to a great community like Hannah, buy a newer place or set up a newer small park model or a single story type place for $250,000, put $250,000 in the bank, and have a nice quiet community to live in, either as a summer place if they, you know, winter down in Arizona or something like that. So really the community is starting to come up with ideas on how to mitigate the population loss, because at the end of the day, that's the biggest struggle, is the people that'll be leaving town. So does that answer your question?
I got a couple of questions for you. You might as well sit down because we're going to be here a while. So.
I can't, but I don't mind standing.
Everybody nervous.
I like to think on my feet.
So a couple of things I have. I want to know a little bit more about the Alberta Party's plan for budget. We heard earlier today from Nate about the fact that they're planning on cutting taxes to the large corporations, and for me that has some merit. The fact that they have a plan, conceptual plan in place, and I think that's important. And answer that, and then I got one more for you.
So there's stuff on budget, stuff on taxes.
Yeah, just what your overall plan for the Alberta Party financially is. What do you guys see coming down the pipe, and how do you plan on dealing with the budget going forward?
Yeah, budget and economy is a big one. Taxes, obviously, that's usually the big chatter around election time. We look at it as a balance. You can't, obviously, you know, I'm not going to sit here and dump on the NDP or the UCP and stuff, but you can't spend your way to prosperity, but you also can't slash and burn your way to prosperity either. So we need to look for more efficient ways to deliver services and get back to a balanced budget, but we have to do it in a managed way. So we're not cutting frontline services like education and healthcare, senior support, that kind of thing. As far as broad-based taxes, I know the UCP has come out and said that they're going to cut corporate tax. Honestly, I don't see that as a big solution, just a broad-based corporate tax cut that is kind of like trickle-down economics, which might create some jobs. I mean, hopefully it would create jobs. I see that as, you know, maybe big corporations creating jobs in Calgary and stuff, and if that helps, that's great. But ultimately, big corporations get to decide if they create a job or if they pocket the tax cut. I don't see big corporations chasing a tax cut, and if they do, then they ultimately chase the next tax cut. So I don't know if that's what we're looking for. The Alberta Party wants to look at a small and medium-sized business tax cut, because the business, small and medium, well, all businesses, but the small and medium ones really got hammered over the last few years with the corporate tax increase, the carbon tax, the minimum wage hike were three of the big ones. And let's face it, and I think 90% of the jobs in Alberta are small and medium-sized business jobs. So it's more important to focus on that, especially, and this is where I see rural Alberta, our riding, having a better benefit, is if a local employer, let's say, has 5 employees, if they can add that one more employee, that's huge. That's big for us. Whereas, you know, a broad-based corporate income tax cut, another job in Calgary, you know, a Walmart or McDonald's, is that going to have the same effect? Certainly not out here. So I like our plan of more managed, looking at the small and medium business sector, as opposed to just a broad-based tax cut.
My second one is, I sit on ASHA and provincial board, and I sit on our local housing authority board. What's your guys' plan with seniors? Where do you guys see the seniors fitting into your overall platform?
Yeah, seniors that's a huge concern. I think they represent between 20 and 25% of the population. Certainly not going to go down anytime soon. And I think they only get like 1% of the provincial budget. So there's a bit of a disconnect there. Like some of the other areas we're focusing on, seniors, we want to see it as more of a person-centric model where funding and resources follow the person and their needs. So whether it's dementia help, assisted living, it should be based on the individual need. And then, where I really want to see things going, especially in our small communities, is especially on the housing side. So I think in-home care, assisted living, keeping people in their homes longer is important. It's a better quality of life than just jamming people into a nursing home. And it's actually cheaper in the long run to have people just assisted living where you get home care to come in and help them. And then as they transition, we obviously need more housing supports. So I think what we really have to do, and like you said, there's organizations that we belong to. So whether it's Continuing Care Association, Seniors Community Housing Association, I think you mentioned, partner with those associations to come up with our ideas to mitigate these problems and consult them going forward. So that's what I would like to see.
Yeah, I was just wondering on MSI funding in rural Alberta, the municipalities deliver a lot of the services. So I was just wondering, does your party have a stable MSI funding model in place or policy?
Nothing concrete yet, but obviously, with my background in municipal work, it's huge. And I know you guys probably face the same challenges we do. For example, we're doing a water project in Delia. We just started.
It's got money?
We did.
Oh, come on.
It took us 10 years to get it. See, that's the problem. This project is tripling the capacity of our water storage, which we get from the Henry Kroger line out in Hannah. So the project was first looked at in 2006, I think it was when they started talking to the feds for the Water for Life program, one of those ones. So finally, the federal government, late last year, or 2017, said, "You're approved. Congratulations. Here's your $500,000, which the project was $1 million at the time, has gone up to $1.5 million. Oh, and by the way, you have 6 months to get it done." Well, Delia hasn't put away $1 million over the last 10 years to do a water project. So first thing we did is we scrambled and said, we need more time to get this project to where we can actually work on it, find the funding. So we scrambled. So we're in the middle of it right now, but MSI is obviously going to play a big part of that for us. We're using not only our 2018, but probably our 19, 20, 21, 22 MSI funding, if we get it, I guess. So we're going to have to borrow, obviously, and then pay that back. So, yeah, as a party or for myself, MSI is huge because you can't do any projects, especially out where we are, without sustainable, predictable funding. So I don't know what you guys find out here, but they want a 5-year capital budget, but they don't tell you what your MSI is for more than 6 months in advance. So how can you do a 5-year capital budget when you don't know what your MSI is going to look like? It just doesn't make sense.
Your party's spoken about rural crime and how they feel like they should deal with the issue.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a huge issue. The immediate obvious answers are more support for policing services and justice, backlogs in the courts and that kind of thing. But really, I think we have to look at the underlying problems. Unemployment being the number one problem, right? If people have jobs, they're less likely to actually commit crime. But then you've got, addictions, mental health issues that I think you have to look at, because lots of the rural crime we see, you guys probably see as well, is repeat offenders that are struggling with something. And that doesn't make it right, but if you can tackle the underlying issue with more supports, then hopefully you reduce the crime. It's just throwing money at police. You say in Delia, we're handled by the Drumheller detachment. So, that's minimum half an hour away. So, they're already understaffed. Throwing more money at it and hiring 1 or 2 police would be great, but that's not going to solve the actual issue. So that's what we want to do.
Sort of back to the business and corporations, whether to give tax break in tax incentive or not. I think investor confidence is a big problem in Alberta right now. A lot of the big corporations have and are talking about moving south. So I think it would be, in my opinion, be fairly important to try to attract those larger businesses just to create more confidence in the business sector. I know you said you're going to concentrate on the medium-sized businesses, but I think the large ones are important too.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right, investor confidence is a problem. I don't know that a tax cut for larger corporations is going to be the decider in them staying or investing money. It's obviously a factor, don't get me wrong. But at the end of the day, like you look at a corporation like, and I know this isn't maybe Alberta based, but Amazon, when they were looking at going anywhere in North America, like Alberta, we currently have one of, if not the lowest corporate tax rates in Canada. Well, that didn't change a corporation's mind to come here. There's many factors. I think investor confidence plays into not only taxes, but when you're moving employees here, you have to look at the full scope. So you're looking at education, you're looking at healthcare, but you're also looking at stability. I think one of the big reasons why Alberta was successful over the past however many years was, we had one government, and like them or not like them, one government for 40 years is generally pretty stable, right? We know on a municipal level, if you have 7 councillors and 6 of them are on from term to term, things usually start to work fairly smoothly. If you have 5 new councillors out of 7 every term, things get pretty chaotic for a few years. So I think the investor confidence was there because Alberta was a stable place with a political climate. And I think now you've gone from 44 years of one government all the way over to another extreme, and now we're looking at going from extreme to extreme. And businesses are like, well, every business, like an ATCO or somebody, they make plans that are 20, 30 years long. That's how they fund things. If they don't know what the political climate or the rules are going to be for more than 4 years, they're not going to invest. So business, as much as they want the best rules, they want to know what the rules are and that they're going to be in place for a long time. And I think that's what speaks to the investor confidence.
Your parties stand on carbon tax, where it's been a lot of conversation within our province, so all provinces.
Obviously, yeah. We're actually working on our platform on that one right now, so we don't have the definitive platform. For sure, we're going to eliminate it off home and business heating, because the idea behind a carbon tax is no different than any other sin tax, like alcohol or drugs. They're trying to get people to change their behavior. While in rural Alberta, we can't change much of our behavior like they can. In the cities, they can jump on a bus or a train and avoid much of the carbon tax in that respect. Rural Alberta, it's a sales tax because everything we do either comes out by truck or we have to drive somewhere. So that being said, everybody in Alberta has to heat their homes. Business has to heat their businesses. So we'll eliminate it off home and business heating. We'll keep the industrial side of it. So the specified gas emitters was brought in 2007. On oil sands development, coal plants, those kind of things. So they've been playing in that arena for a long time. So we'll probably keep some kind of industrial carbon tax, and then we're currently working on the rest of it right now. We've thrown ideas around, like we have some great rural representatives on our group. So eliminating it off propane, for example, because farmers have to dry their grain. So why should you penalize them for that? So those are some of the other ideas we're throwing in the mix. I'll further on that point, I know it's federally right now, or all the provinces are talking about fighting it. I'm not sure where that's going to end up. I think we obviously have to stand up for Alberta, but we also have to work with our other levels of government, whatever those are going to look like. So whether we end up eliminating much of the carbon tax or just changing it, I think we have to keep a made in Alberta approach at the very least, so that we have control over it.
Well, in rural Alberta, we're agriculture and basically the oil field, and our oil field has been very much stymied, and a lot of that's been because of the pipelines trying to get our product out with the U.S. producing so much more. Parties stand on the pipelines. How do we get our product out to start fueling our Alberta economy again?
Yeah, we have a very specific plan. We want to actually do a test case through the Supreme Court to see where the disconnect is between the pipeline approval and why they're not getting built. So, mean, we've had multiple pipelines, not just, I mean, the most recent is Trans Mountain, but we haven't been able to get Keystone through, Energy East, Trans Mountain. They get approved and then they don't get built. So there's a disconnect. And even though I know people blame BC, for example, I think most people in BC are for it. It's a political football right now because of the way they have minority government. The Green Party is propping up the government in power. So, I mean, of course the government in power is going to stand up and say they're against a pipeline because they lose their job if they don't, right? So our plan is very practical. We want to see where the disconnect in the system is to say, why can't we get this through? What is the regulatory hurdle that we seem to be stumbling on for these pipelines?
Look at Energy East with getting it through Quebec also, because, and look at what their party politics dictate.
Exactly, yeah. So,
tied to that, another question is, we continue to have our bridges that we put in for rebuilding put back, and like we were talking today, from our economy, rural supplies, lumber, oil field, farming, and our roads are getting, like, we're not seeing any of this funding. We're not seeing funding for Water for Life in our small areas. And that's what keeps our people here. You're doing a water project, but I mean, we were sitting fairly high in the queue to up through Buffalo Lake area and into provincial parks and stuff, and we were kicked off this last one. So just how it seems to be so much of the money was put towards the major centers, and but we supply a lot of the raw materials to the major centers and supply the jobs for the major centers.
yeah, I think that's what people, and kind of alluded to when I was talking about, going up to Edmonton and educating people. I think people got to realize, especially in the cities, that, I mean, the money comes from rural Alberta. There's no oil wells and no wind turbines in downtown Calgary, right? There's no farms in downtown Calgary. So there has to be an education piece to say, like, why are we not getting our fair share? Why are we funding the cities and all their growth and all their infrastructure? It's no different than Alberta standing up and saying, well, hey, Ottawa, the money's coming from Alberta. Why is there a disconnect? Why aren't we getting our fair share of what's going on? So, yeah, absolutely, we need to do a better job of, I guess, in that respect, lobbying and saying, we have projects, we have things we need out here too. And it's, years ago I heard somebody actually say, well, it's cheaper if we just moved everybody from Stettler to Red Deer and just had everything here. Well, who's gonna grow the beef for your hamburgers, right? Where's your power gonna come from? So there has to be an education piece for everybody to say, like, you rely on us just like we rely on you, and together, we're a lot stronger off. So.
So in the healthcare field, Calgary's got the Cancer Institute going. Are you guys still on board for that? Is that something that you guys see going forward? And also, what I would like to see is you get together with your friends in what I would call your party caucus of the two MLAs from Red Deer, yourself, the Camrose, Pinoka, Rocky, Rimbey area, down to Olds and Innisfail area as a group, and I think get together and discuss the need for a new hospital in the Red Deer Hospital. Red Deer is the hub for us. Everything that gets major gets sent there that is from this area. I mean, unless you get starred to Edmonton or Calgary. To that end, I don't know if you've been there lately, but it is quite antiquated. We have had an announcement that we're getting funding for our hospital here and going forward with that, and that's big news. We're in the process of trying to raise $1 million for that as well. But I think it's imperative that Red Deer keeps in the queue and is known that it's not just Red Deer, that it is all of central Alberta that utilizes it. And I mean, we've had 44 years of the same government, but that hospital is well over 50 years old and it's showing its age. So I would hope that you would bring that forward and make it known at any chance that you get that that's very important to us.
Yeah, absolutely. It's and this is kind of where I go back to you can't spend your way out of problems, but you also can't cut to get out of them. So it's not only just healthcare, it's education, it's infrastructure. So yeah, obviously Red Deer Hospital is a main hub for this area. I know in Hannah we send lots of people down to Calgary to the foothills. So you have to fund those initiatives to keep them viable. But one thing we've also talked about as a party, and with our leader, Stephen Mandel, as a former health minister, it was brief, but he had a good experience, is bringing services back to our rural communities. So, for example, we've talked about creating smaller, decentralizing things and having smaller regions. So you look at, let's say, Drumheller, Stettler, and Hanna becomes its own little hub. And you're not going to bring back every service, but what if Stettler had an MRI machine and Drumheller had dialysis and Hanna had, whatever service it is, so that all of our people don't consistently have to go to Red Deer or Calgary. And that eliminates some of the backlog at the major centers because they're always strapped for space and funding. And it also helps our rural areas because what's the first thing you do when you go to Red Deer or we go to the foothills in Calgary? Well, you're there all day for a 5-minute appointment. You hit Walmart, you hit Costco, you hit the mall. So you take your purchasing power and your economic growth outside of your community as well. So if we can bring back services to small towns, it's not going to be every service, but if it's, bring it back to little regional hubs, then it also brings back economic development. So that's one thing we really want to push.
I like that idea, and remind them that the road travels both ways. Their people that are in the major cities can definitely come out and get the services here. If we're not busy, there's no reason that they can't travel like we have had to for so many years. So, and it'd be good economic drivers for us.
Absolutely. Like, what if Stettler with a newer hospital became the Central Alberta hub for knee replacements, or Hanna became the hub for hip replacements or something, right? We have underutilized facilities in our communities, and they are screaming with people lined up in hallways in the cities. So you're right. Like, if we brought that stuff back out here, and then you bring that economic driver back with it. So absolutely. Questions for Mark? Well, good. Thank you very much, Mark. Thank you.
Pretty painless, eh?
What's that?
Pretty painless. We didn't really that hard.
Yeah, no, you guys were great. I had a good talk with your town council. I was there for probably 45 minutes or an hour. They had a lot of good stuff. So, but no, it's as much as we want to sit there and complain about pipelines and carbon taxes and all that, I really want to focus on our communities. Like I said, being the CAO and the mayor and stuff, I really want to focus on building the communities back up, getting people out to them. So I think that's really where our benefit can come from. So.
Well, if I may, Mr. Chairman, one more for you, Mark, then, and I think we asked that to the last guy about how do you deal with such a large riding? What's your plans? What's your plans dealing with it going forward with the municipalities?
Again, it's that collaboration piece and staying in constant contact. I've got my cell phone number. You guys can all have it. You can reach me. Not quite 24 hours a day. I probably shut it off at 2 in the morning. But really, if you want to know what's going on in your riding, you talk to the people on the ground, and that's you guys. Then as far as actually committing to get out here, I mean, there's 22 municipalities, 6 or 7 school divisions, not counting counties and special areas and stuff. So, I'd want to commit to trying to be out to most of them once every year, once every couple of years for at least a face-to-face. But like, if you got a problem, here's my email, here's my phone. Give me a shout and let me know what's going on. Because really, as the elected representative, I would be the conduit to the government to say, hey, we need money for bridges, we need money for hospitals. What are you doing to help our small businesses? So it's got to be the job, right? Thank you very much. Thank you very much. You too. Okay. Next subject is our in camera. And tried an element legal.
Oh.
I would assume we would go under both under section 27 for privileged information. Got legal opinions on both.
27? Councilor Neitz? All in favor? You in favor?
10 AM. One item. Motion for adjournment.
Quick draw here.
All in favor? Thank you.